Starmer, and then I would tell the Galactic Empire that he was part of the Rebel Alliance and let them blow him away with the Death Star. No Brits was involved, no fingers could be pointed.
You carry on taking the medication, George. Yes, I'd send all the Labour government to space with a one-way ticket and throw in the SNP for being useless. They're all a bunch of... Oh, all right, fair enough.
One person, quite frankly, I think needs to go to space in a one-way journey is Jeremy Kyle. He goes on about his age one more time, how he's 60 this year, he was 59 last year, repetitively over the course of the weeks and months. We have to hear him, I'm 60 this year, I'm 60 this year.
Richard Tice, did you put that cheeky bugger up to that?
I'm hoping he's going to send me the invoice because that was absolutely brilliant.
Which MP would you send to space?
Although I'll get in terrible trouble if I answer that. But it's fair to say there's quite a long list.
The sad thing is about sending people into space on a one-way ticket is I don't think that we've built a spaceship big enough to take the lunatics off this planet. I mean, from the net zero loonies to the transgender loonies to the racists to the terrorists, there is just so into the wokerati. We need some big spaceships.
Big spaceships.
Good evening. I never know how you're going to start this conversation, Jeremy.
Katy Perry went to space today, OK? Who would you send... I'd love her to say what I wanted to, but I'd never disrespect her. Who would you send to space who could never come back?
Well, I'd be happy to send Ed Miliband to space, I think.
Oh, that is an outrageous question, so I'm not even going to answer that question.
Sam Matterface, so you get the job, yeah? Go on.
No, Sam Matterface, I tell you what, there's no.
I think David Lammy would be the person I'd want to send up in space and never come back again.
Yeah, the problem is how much would the bill be for him to munch through whatever food on the way there?
Hey, it worked.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to Mike Graham's Morning Glory. That's what some people call it anyway. Some people call it that. Donald Trump, of course, speaking today. He's going to be telling us all about whether he's going to have a meeting with Vladimir Putin over the coming days. We've got much more to talk about this morning, though, than intercontinental ballistic missiles and whether or not there's going to be peace in Ukraine. Because front page of the Daily Mail this morning, HMRC staff hold class on guilt of being British. That's great, isn't it? So Kemi Badenoch's leading a backlash over tax officials' nonsense seminar during office hours. No wonder you can't get them on the phone. You try and get a phone call through to HMRC to ask if you can get away with not paying quite so much tax this year. You're on hold for about 55 days, obviously because they're doing these staff meetings about why you should be guilty for being British. That's one story. Front page of the Times has got wealthier areas face big rises in council tax. I mean, you would wonder, wouldn't you, the people running this country, they call an area wealthy. Do they not realise that most areas have got some wealthy people in, some poor people in, some social housing, some very expensive penthouses? You know, there is no such thing really as a wealthy area, so I don't know how they're going to manage this, but Central London and some home counties' councils could suffer big budget cuts, leading to predictions that services ranging from bin collections to elderly care will be hit unless council taxes rise. Is there anybody in government, whether it's local or national in this country, that knows how to run a budget? It doesn't seem so. Starmer's pledge on tax has been thrown into chaos on the front page of the Daily Telegraph. The Prime Minister has refused to rule out rises in VAT, income tax or national insurance to fix the £50 billion black hole. It was only 22 billion when they came in, right? So they blamed the Tories for that. How has it now ballooned to 50 billion unless they've been profligate with our money? One of my favourite stories this morning, front page of the I newspaper, Labour's Minister for Homelessness ejects her tenants out of her own property and then puts the rent up for the next lot coming in. So she's actually genuinely creating homelessness instead of solving it. A bit like Tulip Siddiq, the Minister for Corruption, who's now facing a corruption charge in Bangladesh. Front page of The Sun, BBC Stew. MasterChef airs with the axe too. Apparently the show with Greg Wallace and John Turone that's out there now has been so badly edited and horrendously chopped up that it doesn't make any sense, which is hilarious. Meanwhile, there's a female star on the BBC who showed a vile pic of some person's private parts. And breakfast Charlie State is now the subject of an investigation. I mean, did they do anything at the BBC apart from sending dirty pictures to each other and talking about Palestine? Unbelievable. Chloe Dobbs is here. Chloe, very good morning to you.
Morning.
Nice to see you. It's 5 minutes past 6. We've got loads of migrant stories as well. Apparently, hotel migrants have been linked to hundreds of crimes, according to a piece in the Telegraph. And the Daily Mail was over in France yesterday, northern France, for the first of the one-in, one-out scenario. And there's something called a dinghy rush hour. Starts around about 7:15 in the morning, where everybody clambers onto boats and heads over to Britain. Yesterday, hundreds of them came in, and none of them went out. So it's hundreds in, none out. Welcome to the real world. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. So, here we are. It's Thursday, the 7th of August, and very good morning to you, Chloe. A lot of stories around this morning.
Yeah.
Where would you like to begin? I mean, I don't know. I suppose HMRC and the British guilt classes probably strikes me as the most amusing story this morning. HM Revenue Customs able to log on to an online session during office hours yesterday, prompting a furious backlash. Tory leader Kemi Badenoch describing it as nonsense. This goes on all the time in Whitehall, doesn't it? You've basically got loads and loads of woke people with nothing better to do than go, I know, let's have a seminar on how awful it is to be British, and, you know, whether you're white or whether you're black or whether you're guilty or whether, you know, what are they doing?
I mean, complete waste of time. I mean, no good private company would use their resources having staff during their working hours going to some seminar on the guilt of being British.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just crazy. Yeah. And then we also, so you've got HMRC where you can't get them to answer the phone.
No.
They really should be prioritising that rather than this, right? And then you've got the NHS, where apparently we lost 26,000 NHS working hours to people attending woke events, which also cost a lot of money to run. And it's all this same sort of stuff like guilt of being British, white privilege, DEI, transphobia, this and that, right? I mean, it's just a complete and utter waste.
It really is.
And when the taxpayer's paying for it, I mean, as I said, a good private company would never do this. But if a private company does decide to do this stuff, I think, fine, they want to waste their money, that's okay. But when it's taxpayers' money and you can't get an adequate service from them, they won't answer the phone and you can't get an NHS appointment, it's just taking us for fools.
It's mad, isn't it? This thing that they had yesterday was the Guilt of Being British listening circle from 11 a.m. until noon, run by the HMRC Race Network. I didn't know there was one of those. It was billed as a powerful, interactive and reflective listening circle exploring the emotional complexity of being South Asian and British. Covering topics including the emotional weight of colonial history and inherited trauma. Have you got any inherited trauma?
No, I don't
think I have either. My
although
parents were from
apparently
Scotland.
you've got epigenetics, and if your mother is, say, stressed while she's carrying you as a baby, that can get passed down to you.
Yeah, my mother, I think, wasn't stressed in particular because in those days people didn't get stressed, you know, they just got on with it. But my parents were Scottish, so I might be able to claim some kind of colonial, you know, backlash in my previous life from when, you know, England and Scotland were at war. Perhaps the Battle of Culloden or something like that. I could go, no, I'm definitely traumatised by that historically.
Yeah, nowadays young lot are stressed out if the train is 2 minutes late or whatnot.
I'm stressed out I have to go to work. I have to get out of the house. I mean,
they're saying I have to go into work. I can't. I mean, these civil servants, what they were going to... Have they gone on strike about this, having to go in 2 days a week?
Well, yeah, they don't want to go in more than 2 days a week.
I know, they think that that's horrible to have to go in for half of the week.
I know, absolutely ridiculous. Earlier this year, a report by the Commons Public Accounts Committee found that HMRC answered just 66.4% of customers' calls to advisors, well below the target of 85%. Performance has reached an all-time low, apparently, in HMRC. Around 40,000 people who had been on hold for more than 70 minutes were cut off without an explanation. We've all had that, you know.
I was on the verge of tears the other day trying to get hold of Scottish Power, and they just kept saying, "Oh, we'll direct you to someone," and then hanging up on me and having to start again.
Happens a lot, doesn't it?
There's nothing worse than having to wait on the phone. And I mean, Rachel Reeves, she's got a lot of money to find, as we're now finding out. There's apparently a 50 billion black hole. Maybe it would be a good idea for the tax service to answer the phone to people who are trying to pay their taxes.
Yes, because then they could get more money in, couldn't they? As opposed to just announcing they're putting more taxes on. Because on the front page of the Telegraph, Starmer's pledge on tax thrown into chaos. He was out and about yesterday, and we'll have a couple of clips from him. I think we've got one here. Asked about tax rises in the autumn budget. Here we go.
In the autumn, we'll get the full forecasts and obviously set out our budget. The focus will be living standards, and we will build on what we've done in the first year of this government. We've stabilised the economy, and that means interest rates have been cut now 4 times. And for anybody watching this on a mortgage, that makes a huge difference on a monthly basis to how much they pay. In the first year, we've raised wages as well, both in the private sector plus the minimum wage, which means people have got a bit more money coming into their pocket. And so at this stage, that'll all be set out in the budget, but the focus will very much be on living standards and making sure people feel better off. Some of the figures that have been put out are not figures that I recognise, but the budget won't be until later in the year, and that's why we'll have the forecast then, and we'll set out our plans. What's really important is that I'm very clear about our focus, which will be on living standards and making sure that people feel better off, partly because more money is coming into their pocket in the first place through better wages, and partly because we're bearing down on costs like mortgages and other costs to everyday families.
Everyday families now? Is that what's an everyday family?
Everyday family?
Hello, I'm from an everyday family. The focus, I'm very clear about this. He literally spoke for about a minute and a bit there and said nothing. There's nothing in that, is there? The focus. It's
just babble and it's just lies. I mean,
it's no rubbish. He doesn't recognise the £50 billion black hole, because if the £22 billion black hole was the Tories' fault, even though it didn't exist, whose fault is the £50 billion black hole? Because that's quite significantly more than 22, seems to me.
It's definitely Rachel Reeves's fault, and we all know it. They can't keep parroting the same line that it's the Tories' fault any longer. And I mean, him saying there, oh, the focus is going to be on raising living standards. Right. First of all, that's very vague on purpose.
Yeah, very vague. Also,
but
people are not better off, right?
No.
He gave public sector workers a pay rise, so they're probably better off, but everybody else is worse off.
I mean, he's saying that, oh, well, we've raised the minimum wage, which means people have got more money in their pockets. And I'm like, hang on, you've got companies, you know, especially companies who hire a lot of minimum wage staff, like, say, a pub or a cafe or a restaurant, right? Yeah. They're having to fire a load of people because they've got a load more money to make up from the national insurance hike and the big hike in the national minimum wage, right? That means that there are fewer jobs going around. And there's another story on our list somewhere today where you've got some polling done of young people who are all saying we don't think that the situation is going to get any better. We think there's no hope of getting a job. Yeah. And they say we're going to get Britain working, right? How are you meant to get Britain working if all of the companies are currently firing people and not hiring anymore because they've got this huge national insurance bill and a big minimum wage hike to factor into their costs?
And also they're worried now about what's going to happen in the autumn, because even though he says we're going to wait till the autumn to decide, which our focus was going to be on, but the point is that nobody's investing in business because they don't know what the tax regime is going to be like come October and November. So they don't want to spend any money. They don't want to speculate about the fact that there could be a worse state of the economy. And as far as interest rates coming down, there's nothing to do with Starmer. There's everything to do with the Bank of England. They might be reducing them today, apparently. But at the end of the day, that is outside of the government's control. They haven't stabilised the economy, as he says. The economy is in the absolute crapper.
I mean, that couldn't be further from the truth what he said, right? He is taking credit and saying we've stabilised the economy, we've done well with the economy, therefore the interest rate is being cut. It's the complete opposite, actually. The reason why they're cutting the interest rate is because the economy hasn't grown. Like Rachel Reeves said, it's stagnated. I mean, we had 2 months of negative growth, right? That is why the rate is being cut, because they've done so poorly with the economy that they desperately need to do something to start boosting economic growth.
Yeah, absolutely right. Let's get a better view of Keir Starmer, and now that we know what he means about everyday families, he was out and about with some kids yesterday talking about music, believe it or not.
God.
Hello.
So what are you playing?
Well,
you're playing...
Oh, yeah, babe.
OK. Shall we have a go? Are you doing that from memory?
Oh, yeah.
Perfect.
So C and then G. So you've got C and G.
So just here, this chord should have been a C. So
Listen to music, and I mean, it's a big part of my life in the sense I love it.
Apparently music's a big part of his life in the sense that he loves it. He's never mentioned music in any interview I've ever read about him, right? The one thing he has said is he doesn't have a favourite book, right? He doesn't have a favourite movie.
Because he's never read one?
Well, I don't know. I wonder if he's got a favourite song. What do you think his favourite song would be?
Ooh. Well, I don't think he has much musical knowledge.
Row the boat was that kid was playing to.
Do you remember when he put out that tweet saying? Do you remember when he put out that tweet saying how many great?
Row the boat gently across the channel. Merrily, merrily, merrily. I mean, this guy you can't make this stuff up.
I mean, it's so every single video he puts out. He's supposed
to be a father, right? You know, those of us who are parents usually can identify quite well with children and have a little chat. He's like having a kind of conversation with a child like he's an adult.
I know.
Have you done that from memory?
I mean, he looks and sounds so awkward there. Yeah. I don't know what's funnier to watch that, or do you remember when Rishi Sunak went into a school and he said to this group of kids, "I just love Coke. I'm a massive Coke addict." Right. And then he went, "Oh, Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola." Right.
Yeah, amazing. It was like the time he went to. Remember, we went to the homeless sort of food bank place and asked the guy what he did for a living. And the guy was like queuing up to get some breakfast.
I'm homeless, mate.
Yeah, he was homeless. And he goes, "What do you do for a living?" "I'm homeless." Anyway, so here's your challenge for this morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let's have some Keir Starmer songs. What would be Keir Starmer's favourite song? I'm going with Row, Row, Row the Boat, because obviously that's quite current in terms of the migrants. We can talk about that in a minute. We'll take a little break because the Mail have done a great job on day one of One In, One Out. They actually sent a reporter over to
it's going really well, isn't it?
Is it Gravelines? Gravelines? Anyway, they sent something over. There's a dinghy rush hour now, where it's a bit like the Bakerloo line at 7 o'clock in the morning. But there's one going after another, and you've got a pretty good chance of getting in. Anyway, 16 minutes past 6. Chloe Dobbs is here. I'll be back after this.
And there are so many cases of people that we have tried to extradite who have made groundless appeals time and time again. And so many activist immigration judges have come down with ridiculous rulings. We all know the chicken nuggets one, and there's a whole litany of other stupid decisions whereby they will not deport people who absolutely should not be here.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 21 minutes, very nearly past 6. This is, of course, Thursday. It is August the 8th, August the 7th, I should say, sorry. Chloe Dobbs is here. Some great stories around this morning, all sorts of different things going on. We're asking you for songs for Keir Starmer, one from Dave for AC/DC's Highway to Hell. So that'll do. I'm still going with Row, Row, Row the Boat, which I quite like. But let's have a look at the front page of The Sun this morning, because the BBC are right back in the deep doo-doo again, because I don't understand why they've decided to rehash MasterChef. You know, having got rid of Greg Wallace and having got rid of John Turode, they've now got the problem they've got is they've got a programme that they had in the can, and they've had to edit it apparently so heavily. The front page of the Daily Star is calling it Faster Chef. As in farce. They're saying MasterChef's new series has been branded as shambles due to the heavy editing after the sackings of Greg Wallace and John Turode. It's an absolute mess, apparently, because I suppose they've been so careful not to have any banter in it for fear of being, criticised, that they've sort of ruined the show.
I know.
What's the point of doing it?
I mean, nobody's actually watching it just for the sake of the cooking. People watch it for entertainment, right? There've got to be some jokes in there, else it's no fun.
Exactly. That's the whole point of it, right?
Of course, if there was a joke in there that was deeply inappropriate, then of course, fine, edit that out, no problem. But just, normal day-to-day banter that you would see on a cooking show, they've got to leave it in, else nobody's going to watch it. Else they should just not bother airing it.
I don't know why I saw it, but yesterday on social media there was a sort of slightly cringy Greg Wallace video that he put out of him and his wife, who were celebrating 9 years together, having a picnic, and they were at somewhere like Hever Castle, and he sort of panned around and said, "Isn't it lovely?" And it was just this lake, and it was all a bit sad. It was kind of like,
have you seen what his new career is now?
No.
So he's got a health and fitness website, and you can buy health and fitness courses and online coaching.
Okay.
And he keeps showing off his six-pack.
He's obviously got some kind of exhibitionist side to him, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Which is a bit odd.
Yeah. But that's his new job.
Yeah, but that's not enough, you see, because there's not just one story that MasterChef airs with the axe to Wallace and Turode. BBC bosses are also talking about an unnamed female star on a different show who's been reprimanded for showing a colleague an explicit picture, supposedly of some kind of genitalia, which apparently upset the person that was shown the picture, so much so that she burst into tears.
Oh, dear.
So there's one scandal. Then it turns out that Charlie State, who's also on BBC Breakfast, is apparently going to be probed. He's going to be the subject of an investigation into allegations of bullying. I mean, the BBC Breakfast show sounds like it's a complete nest of vipers. You know, you've got the editor of the show, whose name I forget, who doesn't speak to either Naga Manchetti or to Charlie State. Charlie State and Naga Manchetti apparently don't speak to each other, and yet they have to put out a show together. It's like you and I sitting here without actually being able to talk to each other, just looking at the camera and saying, and then next, let's talk about, what's going on at the BBC, without actually having any interaction at all. It's weird, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I guess because they don't have adverts, they don't have to sit awkwardly in so many breaks, right?
I suppose
that would be very awkward if they just have to sit there not speaking to each other and doing the advert breaks.
There have been cases of that on other shows in various different arenas. But, it makes you wonder at the BBC, what do they do? They all sort of send dirty pictures to each other all the time.
I know, it's just one thing after another. And I mean, you think it's bad enough them fitting 3 different scandals onto the front of this. But I mean, that's just a highlight reel. We've had the whole Bob Villain saga. We've had the Gaza documentary. We've had all sorts going on, right? We just had a story yesterday. They're in trouble because they gave 1,200 quid to a smuggler.
Oh, yes.
So, I mean...
Yeah, they managed to...
It's quite questionable whether that's worth it to get the footage, but still, it was causing a lot of drama for them. I mean, it just never ends.
It doesn't, does it?
Of course, we've had Hugh Edwards, and that rumbled on for a long time.
Well, that's still going on.
We had Gary Lineker. It never ends.
No, it doesn't end. We've still got... the Hugh Edwards story hasn't finished yet, really, because he's still been given a load of money it's supposed to be giving back. And the last time I saw Tim Davie in front of a select committee, he was basically saying, oh, yeah, we haven't got the money back yet. And they said to him, well, what are you going to do if he doesn't give it to you back? And, we'll have to cross that bridge when we come to it. So, it's taxpayers' money. It's about 300,000 or 400,000 quid that he was paid while he was on suspension, knowing that he was going to be charged with quite a serious criminal offence. And they've asked for the money back, and he's just sitting on it. And so it's like, well, what are you going to do?
I mean, the really stupid thing that the BBC did is when they wrote up their contract with Hugh Edwards, they forgot to put in the clause, which is pretty standard, which says if you bring the association into disrepute, then you won't get all this big redundancy pay if you leave, right?
Yeah.
Apparently they remembered to put that in for Gary Lineker's contract, but for Hugh Edwards, they apparently just forgot to put that in the contract.
Right.
So they are put in this very awkward position where they basically have to give him a load of money.
Yeah, and also he's got a great pension to boot. Let's go back to Starmer.
I think he's probably doing all right.
I've just spotted this, actually. Apparently Lady Starmer had a £650 freebie day out at Ascot. This is in Eden Confidential, the Daily Mail. Keir Starmer has disclosed her attendance at a horse racing event last month thanks to a gift from Ascot Racecourse. That's nice, isn't it? You ever been invited to Ascot Racecourse by the Ascot Racecourse people?
No, sadly
£650 worth of tickets from the Berkshire Racecourse. Apparently the entry says name of donor, Ascot Authority, Holdings Limited, amount of donation or nature and value of donation in kind, tickets and hospitality for 3 family members, £650. Lovely. Isn't that nice? It must be nice, wasn't it, to be able to just
They
live
just
high on the hog.
resist.
Somebody else pays for it, you know, tell everybody. And, of course,
Well, that's
we just heard...
socialism for you.
We just heard
they
Keir
expect everyone
Starmer...
to pay for things for them.
We just heard Keir Starmer talking about... What was the phrase about families? You know, everyday families? I don't think an everyday family gets to go to Ascot.
Do some families not exist every day? What is he trying to say with that? It just makes no sense whatsoever. And they clearly just can't resist the freebies, and the scandals just keep on coming. And
They do.
Absolutely laughable. You would have thought after the whole Lord Ali saga, they would have said, right, guys,
let's just not do it.
No more freebies. Yeah. It's not worth the hassle. It's not worth the scandal.
And
even if you can have a nice
Ascot,
day out.
If you want to go to Ascot,
just pay for it.
Just insist that you pay for it.
I'm sure that she's got £650 probably.
I would
Lady
think so.
Starmer lying around that she can use. And then, of course, we've got the...
Do you think she threw a sickie from her very important job at the NHS in order to go to Ascot, or do you think she maybe took a day off?
Well, I wouldn't put it past her if she pulled a fake sickie on top of this, because they're not very good at avoiding scandal, are they? And then we've got the other scandal, haven't we?
Oh, yeah, this is great. This is on the front page of the I newspaper. Labour's Minister for Homelessness, who's somebody I didn't really know existed, Rushanara Ali, apparently owns some property, right, because she's the Minister for Homelessness, but she's kicked the tenants out of the property in order to hike the rent and get more money in. So she's literally creating people... making people homeless.
And not just a little bit. She's put the rent up £700.
£4,000 a month the house goes for.
Yeah. She's got a fancy London townhouse, which just shows you how...
Another champagne socialist.
Not so working class.
Yeah.
The cabinet of this country are.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been told that they're going to try and fill Whitehall with a load of working class people by only allowing working class people to apply for the civil service. I think Labour, they're trying to combat all of these stories to show, oh yes, we are the party of the working class, we are the party of the working class, when they just really
Ascot Racecourse, houses worth £4,000 a month. It's not really much of a working class picture.
And this homelessness minister, she's insisting that she didn't evict them so that she could raise the rent. She evicted them so that she could sell the house.
Oh, that's all right then.
And then, when conveniently the house didn't sell, she then put the rent up by £700.
Which, of course, is against Labour's new rules, because Labour's making it illegal for landlords to relist a property for higher rent until 6 months after the eviction, which she didn't do.
Yeah.
So she's not even adhering to their own policy.
I mean, she can say, "Oh, that hasn't come into law yet," but it is.
She could say that.
It is quite hypocritical when you are going against what your government is bringing in because they think it's such a great idea.
I know, absolutely extraordinary. Front page of the Telegraph's got a little nib on this one. It's on page 4. At least 200 people living in asylum seeker hotels have been charged with criminal offences this year without police revealing their immigration status. This takes you back to the Nuneaton story of the 2 men who have been charged with the alleged rape of a 12-year-old girl. Initially, the Warwickshire police told counsellors not to reveal the fact that they were Afghanistan men and that they were asylum seekers and they were living in a migrant hotel. And it now turns out that there's 200 more of these similar cases where court records have not revealed or the police have not revealed that these people have been living in hotels. 211 people have been charged with a combined 425 offences. Of these, 109 were violent offences, 44 sexual offences, including 4 counts of alleged rape. I mean, is it any wonder that people are out demonstrating outside these hotels?
I know, and it just makes you think how many stories are there that we haven't heard about.
Yeah.
We've been horrified by the few stories that we have had where they have revealed the identity or at least the ethnicity and the migrant background of the people involved. But how many more are they keeping secret from us because they don't want us to know? And I mean, if it was the case that these 211 people who have been charged, they're non-stories because they've just stolen a packet of crisps from the local shop.
Right.
Not good, but you know, clearly from the numbers here, these are people who have actually allegedly done quite serious things. 109 violent offences and 44 sexual offences. And also, I wouldn't be surprised if these numbers here are only half of the story, because the way I understand that journalists are figuring out who people are who have been charged or who have been to court is basically they look at court records against the list of only about half of the migrant hotels that we know of, because the Home Office won't tell us where all the migrant hotels are.
Exactly.
So it's quite difficult to gather all of the data
it is.
On this.
You've literally got to go through case by case and see what the address of the assailant or the accused is, and if it's a hotel, it's more than likely to be a migrant hotel. But you've still got to double check that.
Yeah.
But you're right. Hundreds and hundreds more probably are going to be found to be involved in all sorts of nefarious activity. Meanwhile, over in France, pages 6 and 7 of the Daily Mail, they've got the thin blue line of gendarmes. They've got a great graphic where it calls the dinghy rush hour, because yesterday, which of course the first day of the one in, one out policy, which has been roundly, completely and utterly, ridiculed, because it just doesn't work, clearly doesn't work, because hundreds of people came in yesterday and nobody went out. Right, the dinghy rush hour starts at 7:15. Dinghy 1 drops onto the beach from the west and picks up 2 groups of young men. 7:20, 5 minutes later, dinghy 2 heads up the canal from inland. Already full, it heads for England. And then dinghy 3, about half an hour later, drops onto the beach from the west and picks up young men and families. We've got pictures of everybody going happily across. They've got some police standing, watching them all leaving, sort of waving them away. And so clearly, this is on Gravelines Beach near Calais. Clearly, nobody's told the migrants that it's one in, one out. They're still coming in their hundreds and they're not leaving. Yeah,
I mean, the chances of being kicked out are so slim, and they might know or they might not know that they're probably all going to be able to put in all these human rights claims and whatnot. And this...
Well, all the people who came yesterday are probably already in a hotel, aren't they?
Yeah, well, exactly. We don't know exactly what's happening with these people. If they're being detained for potential deportation, where are they being taken? Are they being put in a plush hotel with everyone else, and they might be told later, you've got to leave?
This is a question I was asking. I wrote a piece in the Sun yesterday, and I said, where are they going to be putting them? And there's no detention centres that we know of that they can put them in. And how long are they going to be there for? And when are they going to be sent back? All of these questions are unanswered.
Exactly. I mean, they've clearly just rushed this out. They've seen there are all these protests happening at migrant hotels, and they thought, we've got to do something quickly, so we better just get this across the line and say that it's starting this week. But actually, they haven't got a plan. We don't know where in France they're going to go. We're now wondering clearly they're going to be able to make human rights claims. And we've got...
So they're all going to do that, aren't they?
We've got Lisa Nandy apparently saying, oh, well, they can do that over in France. We can send them to France first, and then they can have their human rights claims tested while they're there. But the French are saying, no, you can't send anyone until they've got no outstanding human rights
And also
claims.
The French can apparently refuse to take them back. Because it's all on a case-by-case basis. They've got no real agreement at all that means a fag end. It doesn't
I
mean
also
anything.
absolutely do not trust the French to send us good people. Apparently we're going to be sent people who have family ties in Britain.
Yeah, well, they've all got family ties in Britain. You just have to ask them. Have you got family ties in Britain? Yes. Okay, in you come. That's about as stringent as it is.
Exactly. What are they going to do? Give them a DNA test or something?
They're
they
not
can
going
just say,
to.
oh, yeah, I know my mate Abdul. He can...
Yeah, he lives in Wolverhampton. I was with him the other day. Chris Philp, meanwhile, was out in the Channel yesterday channeling, if you'll pardon the expression, Nigel Farage. Check this out.
So the government announced yesterday they had a new deal with France supposed to stop boats crossing the Channel, so I thought I'd come out here and see what's going on. I'm on the English Channel, probably about 7 or 8 miles off Calais, and behind me you can see a French warship, and just next to it is a dinghy full of illegal immigrants. The French making absolutely no attempt whatsoever to stop it. They've been shadowing it for the last 3 hours. It's about 2 hours from British waters. They're going to be arriving in the UK later on today. So quite clearly the government's claims to be fixing this with their new deal are not working. The evidence is right behind me.
Yeah, the evidence is right behind him and right in front of him as well. I mean, it's never going to stop until they stop giving people incentives to come. That's the bottom line. I mean, we can argue about this till the cows come home. But it's certainly, whatever happened yesterday didn't make one jot of difference. And if anything, probably more people came than normal because it was quite a nice day. Yeah,
I mean, there are some very basic things that they could do before even thinking about some complicated deal with France. Like, maybe don't give them all fancy hotels and PlayStations and bouncy castle trips and cars with 50 quid a week to spend on, which you can go take to go gambling. I mean, we were talking on Plank about all these NHS free passes that they're getting, where they get even more than us Brits, and they get their travel to and from, the doctors paid for, they get free contact lenses, free wigs. We've heard that Wandsworth Council have done a deal with the Lime bikes and the Forest bikes, so that asylum seekers can get all these cheap rides on the bikes. And the reason why Wandsworth Council wanted to do that is to make it easier for migrants to travel to their 3 days out, to go to the cinema, to go to bowling and the theatre and whatever else. I mean, why wouldn't you want to come to Britain? I don't blame the migrants. If I was in France and I saw what was waiting for me in Britain, I'd come. Yeah, well, they are, and they obviously have, and they're probably watching this as well while we're at it. Let's remind ourselves of what Keir Starmer said to Donald Trump about migration.
Well, I think we've been discussing irregular, illegal migration is a huge issue in both of our countries. In the United Kingdom, it is a real cause for concern, and that's why we must bear down on it. In all its aspects, upstream, across Europe, where a lot of ours comes into through northern France, across the Channel, working with our allies, with our colleagues to break the gangs that are actually running this trade.
Bear down, that's obviously one of his new phrases. He said that in 2 separate interviews that we've got of him bearing down on something. Doesn't mean anything. What does that even mean? It doesn't mean anything. I mean, you can give an image of him bearing down on something. I don't really want to think about it, to be honest. Anyway, listen, it's 6:36. We've got loads more to talk about, including a fifth of doctors are apparently sick of Britain. Well, how about we're sick of doctors? How about that? This is Morning Glory.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:39. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. Chloe Dobbs is here as well. I've been asking you for songs for Keir Starmer. Here's one from Peter in Croydon. He says, how about Rodney's songs? How about Crimea River? Or I Can't Feel the Economy Tanking in the Air Tonight? Oh, Lord. Another one from Mark. Hughes Corporation, don't rock the boat. Don't tip the boat over. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of boat references, I suspect. We've already had one from Jim in the Netherlands, who says, here's another suggestion. My ship is coming in by the Walker Brothers. The ship is not coming in. Well, it's coming in full of people, I suppose. Keep these coming. We've got loads of them going on. Let's talk about Kerry Badenoch, shall we, this morning. She's done an interview with the BBC, bizarrely, in which she reveals that she used to believe in God, but her belief in God was killed after reading the story of Joseph Fritzl, who was that ghastly, incredible, horrible story from Germany, I think it was. Joseph Fritzl, the guy who kept one of his daughters in a basement and repeatedly raped her, and she had several of his children, and it was one of the worst stories of all time. She says, I believed that there was a God, and I would have defined myself as a Christian apologist, always arguing with people about why there was a God. But in 2008, this story about Joseph Fritzl and his daughter, who was locked in a cellar for 24 years, that killed it. I mean, I kind of get what she's saying, but it's kind of a weird thing to say, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, it's a very old story, very strange of her to come out with this just now. I mean, she clearly seems to be... It feels like she needs to talk about her identity a lot at the moment, because she was saying the other day about how she no longer feels like she's a Nigerian, she doesn't identify with Nigeria anymore, and now she's come out with this saying, I don't identify as a Christian. I mean, maybe she's just run out of things to say when it comes to politics, so this is what she's coming out with. Yeah, maybe. Clearly the boredom of summer recess has got to her. I think it's a bit early as well, because they've got quite another 4 or 5 weeks to go before it's I mean, maybe she's fed up of every single time she makes a point of, this is what the Tories would do. Everyone says, well, you have 14 years, guys, you didn't sort it out. They have got a point, haven't they? Yeah. Because that is so now she's talking about other matters like her personal identity. Because Chris Philp out on the channel yesterday, making out like he's Nigel Farage, basically. He was in the last government. He was Minister for Justice at the very least. I think he was in the Home Office at one point. He was in a position to do something about the migrants, and he didn't. It's all very well for them, but they all say now, the Tory narrative now is, oh, but, I wasn't in that particular part of the government, or I did say that we should be doing things, but they didn't get done. Or in Robert Jenrick's case, he says, well, I resigned from the government because they weren't doing enough about migration. The fact is, you were still part of a failed attempt to stop people coming here. Yeah, that's the thing. People aren't buying it, and the polls clearly show it. The polls clearly show they are not convinced by the Tories' new promises to turn the country around. No. It doesn't matter if you change the person in a certain cabinet role or as leader of the party. I mean, I think we've heard Kemi Badenoch say about 1 million times now, oh, we're under new leadership now, and things are going to be different. Under new management, like it makes any difference. It really doesn't, does it? There's a funny story on the front page of The Sun, which is not anything to do with migrants, nothing to do with politics, I'm pleased to say. Thousands of bingo players are fuming after thinking they won one big and a £1.6 million prize pot, only for it to be voided due to a glitch. They were playing online Gala Bingo, and they all thought they'd scooped sums of up to £10,000 each, but found out the winnings never made it into their bank account because of some error. There's nothing worse than thinking you've won money when you haven't. I know. I mean, it's a pretty sad state of affairs when you think, oh, Rachel Reeves has taken all of my money, and now the bingo apps have taken all of my money as well that I was entitled to. Oh, my goodness. I mean, could you imagine that? I mean, people are feeling pretty dire in this country at the moment, I think it's fair to say. Not much hope. And then you get this one glimmer of hope when you think, that's it. I've had my moment. Grand. I've won 10 grand. On my bingo app, that's it, that's going to turn this ship around, life's looking up now, and then you find out, oh, sorry, you can't have it because of a technical glitch. And it says here that the players were being awarded thousands of pounds instead of just a few pounds in the game, which cost 1 pence per ticket to play. Jackie Norris, 41, thought she'd bagged 9,599 quid from multiple victories, but she then got an email saying her account had been incorrectly credited. I mean, presumably some of these people... Hopefully she didn't spend any of it before she got it. Presumably some of these people who have lost out on their 10 grand will try and sue Gala Bingo to try and get their money. I don't think they can. I mean, there's probably all sorts of small print where you play these games. Yeah, it depends what the terms and conditions say. But I mean, I'd be pretty peeved off if
You
I
would.
won 10 grand.
Especially if
and
you'd
then I
gone
was
and
told I couldn't
spent
have
2 of it before actually getting it or something. But I suspect that's not what's happened here. A fifth of NHS doctors are sick of Britain, it says on the front page of the Times. 1 in 5 say they're considering quitting or moving abroad in pursuit of better pay and working conditions. I'm sick of hearing from these doctors, right? They spend, 7 years training to be a doctor. Do you think at any point during that 7 years they might actually talk to a few doctors and say, what's it like being a doctor? And then the doctor can say, oh, it's actually quite good, or all the paying conditions are terrible, or you might not like it, so why don't you just give up now? You know, how can you train to do something that you've chosen to do, and then when you get to do it, you go, oh, I don't like it, I'm thinking of moving to Australia.
I guess
off then.
I mean, it takes so long to qualify as a doctor that I guess there are some people who, when they start off their journey of qualifying as a doctor, they think, oh, by the time I finally qualify, the NHS will be sorted out. It won't be a total mess. It won't be a stressful job. But surprise, surprise, the world isn't full of sunshine and rainbows.
Right.
And it still is a total mess. And I sympathise with them to some degree. I can understand that.
I don't. I really don't, because they know what they're getting into. I mean, if you want to be a doctor, you've trained to be a doctor. It takes a long time.
But you can use that qualification in another country, right?
Yeah, you can. I mean, it says here that
I can see the appeal of going to Australia. It's also quite the hip, cool thing for young people to go and move.
It is, but of course,
Australia.
curiously, an awful lot of the people, for example, the junior doctors who say they want to go and move to Australia, but want to work in a kind of a national health service, what they don't realise, or maybe they do, is that Australia has a mixed system. So actually, if you go and work in Australia and you've got a kind of, diametrically opposed view to private medicine, well, you'll be working in it, because that's the way the system works, But it says here, an annual survey of a representative sample of 5,000 doctors found that 2/3 of them are considering moving abroad, and they want higher pay. Again, you know what you're getting paid, you know the job that you're going for, and you know that, I don't know many poor doctors. I talk to some doctors who say they're stressed out and they work too hard and they have to work 5 or 6 days a week, and it's all burning them out. But, they're not poor, are they?
Yeah, they get paid all right. I can understand that they might have some frustration that they're like, this is a job that I've spent 10 years qualifying for and I've got all this student debt. I should be on big bucks. But at the same time, if you choose to become a doctor, I'm sure pay comes into it to some degree, but these doctors will say, oh, I've chosen to become a doctor because I want to save lives. They're doing it for charitable reasons. They're doing it to help people as opposed to making big money. Yet they are willing to strike again and again and again after having the biggest pay rise in the public sector. Those strikes, they kill people.
They do.
They do. They genuinely do.
They do.
More people are going to die. How can you...
And the NHS admitted this when the last lot of strikes happened, when they had the 5-day strike just recently.
Exactly. I mean, that to me just seems so selfish, OK? We need to... Maybe one point in the future there will be a pay rise on the table for you, but we need to grow the economy first before we're going to have any more spare coffers in the bank to give you.
But they've all had pay rises.
I know, they were very lucky to get one when the economy was in such a dire state of affairs. They were very lucky. But you give people an inch and they take a mile, and the greedy lot have come back for more.
That's the problem.
At the expense of people's lives.
Everyday families will say, like ordinary working people would say, they're doing pretty well. They're doing a lot better than we are.
Yeah.
They've had more of a pay rise than we've had.
Exactly. If you've got someone who's earning minimum wage, who's struggling to pay their bills, who's struggling to put food on the table for their kids, finding out now, on top of all the stress I've got in my life, I can't get my doctor's appointment, or my operation has been cancelled because someone who's earning way more than me and who's just had a way bigger pay rise than any of us could ever dream of is on the picket lines again.
Is now on the picket line. Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. Let's get a voice note from Steve.
Hey Mike, Steve from Yorkshire. Songs for Keir Starmer. Things can only get better. Can only get better.
Yeah, and that was a song from a long time ago, which was the theme song, wasn't it, of Tony Blair's government, D-Ream. I'm afraid. Got a couple of suggestions from one from Glenn in Leeds and one from Olivia. How about We Are Sailing by Rod Stewart, and another one from Olivia, Thieves Like Us from New Order. That's not bad, is it? Morning, Mike and Chloe. We've had enough of these illegals invading us. This is going too far now. We can't rely on the government to protect us. I fear what will break out, especially if they're put in HMOs. This is just not fair. It's infuriating. God help us. And that's from Michelle. So many people really, really upset with this government. We've got more to do. We'll play some Donald Trump coming up in a minute, because he was talking yesterday not only about this possible meeting he's got coming up with Vladimir Putin and with Volodymyr Zelensky, but also about Apple coming back to America, and about Jeffrey Epstein as well. It's all coming next.
As a result of this kind of behaviour from the British government and the Canadians and the French, Hamas walked away from the ceasefire table, which is why yesterday we had hostage families saying that the reason the hostages aren't back is because of the Western governments who are rewarding Hamas. So what we all know, I think what we can see in this country is this has nothing to do with Israel, nothing to do with Gaza. This is all to do with internal politics and the pressure being put on him by his own MPs because of a cohort of people who are demanding this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:52. Got some great songs coming in. How about the final countdown by Europe, says John in Carmarthen, or indeed Anarchy in the UK. Stephen Middlesbrough says Chris Reyes On the Beach is one of our illustrious imbeciles' favourite songs. And what about Keir's song now, Smiths, Heaven Knows I'm Miserable Now, says Paul in Bournemouth. Not bad. Let's get a voice note from Glyn.
Morning, Mike. Great show as always. It's Glyn from Lancashire. Call me old-fashioned, but I don't want to feel better off. I actually want to be better off. Get Starmer out now. Thanks. Speak soon.
Yeah. Are you one from an everyday family? That's the big question, isn't it? Let's have a look at Donald Trump. Yesterday, he was asked about a potential meeting with Vladimir Putin and Zelensky.
Well, there's a very good prospect that they will. And we haven't determined where, but we had some very good talks with President Putin today. And there's a very good chance that we could be ending the round, ending the end of that road. That road was long and continues to be long, but there's a good chance that there will be a meeting very soon.
And if there isn't a meeting very soon, I think there's some suggestion that some more sanctions will kick in, I think on Friday, if it hasn't been done by then, but we'll see. He was also asked yesterday about a secret meeting with Jeffrey Epstein, and there's a slight colourful language warning coming up here.
Vice President Vance hosting a gathering this evening to talk about how to respond to the Epstein situation.
Is he working on what?
Is he hosting some kind of gathering of top advisors this evening to talk about how to respond to the Epstein situation?
I don't know. I could ask you that question. I don't know of it, but I think here's the man right here.
I saw it reported today, and it's completely fake news. We're not meeting to talk about the Epstein situation, and I think the reporter who reported it needs to get better sources.
Look, the whole thing is a hoax. It's put out by the Democrats because we've had the most successful 6 months in the history of our country, and that's just a way of trying to divert attention to something that's total bullshit, okay?
There goes the President of the United States of America. You know, yesterday he was on the roof of the White House shouting at people in the Rose Garden who were asking him questions. Absolutely unbelievable.
That was hilarious.
Really funny. And finally, do you remember he was trying to get Apple to come back from China? We'll talk about China in a minute. To say, you know, you need to come back and invest in the United States of America. It looks like it's finally happened. Have a look at this.
Oh, there you are. Hello, fellas. I missed you. Today, Apple is announcing that it will invest $600 billion, that's with a B, in the United States over the next 4 years. That's $100 billion more than they were originally going to invest. And this is the largest investment Apple has ever made in America and anywhere else. And it's just an honor to have you. As you know, Apple's been an investor in other countries a little bit. I won't say which ones, but a couple. And they're coming home. $600 billion. It's the biggest there is. About $17 trillion coming into the United States, which is more than ever before. That's never even come close. There's never been anything like it. Even you, that's even a lot of money for you. Oh, there you are. Hello, fellas. I missed you. Today, Apple.
So that was Tim Cook, the Apple CEO, who obviously has succumbed to Donald Trump's charms. And isn't it great? I mean, the American economy is going really well because of all the investment that's going into it, because of Trump's tariff policies, which were apparently going to ruin the world's economy. None of that came true. All the economists who predicted that have gone very quiet. And so, you know, he wins from a big result against China, really, as well. And China's in the news here, aren't they? Because of Angela Rayner's likelihood of giving them permission to build this huge embassy in Tower Hamlets.
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, $600 billion, huge amount of money.
Yeah.
I mean, Rachel Reeves could only dream of that kind of money coming into the UK.
She must be sitting there weeping.
All the investors are running away from the UK, and they'll all be going to US, Dubai, and elsewhere. So that's definitely a big win for Donald Trump. But on to Angela Rayner. The Chinese, it looks like they may be up to some dodgy spying operations.
No, really? You think?
They don't want to show us the plans. I think they want planning permission to make some changes to their embassy.
Yes.
But they don't want to actually show us what it's going to look like and what they want to do. So there's this big worry that they're just going to have a big espionage.
Yeah, and they're going to have some sort of basement bunker type scenario going on. Nobody knows what they're going to do down there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that this government really has, at least to now, very much underestimated the Chinese and their espionage. And they don't want to upset the Chinese because Ed Miliband wants to buy all their wind turbines and solar panels and wants to buddy up to the Chinese. But all meanwhile, we're being told by security services that MPs, for example, can't have a chit-chat whilst they're walking around St James's Park because the Chinese have hidden all these microphones in the hedges to spy on people's conversations, apparently in the tubes and all sorts.
Well, we've also been told, haven't we, if you've got a Chinese electric car, basically it's not going to be allowed to be parked near any Department of Defence building.
Because that's listening to you, and that's spying on you.
It's literally like a mobile...
Didn't they tell the king he needed to get rid of his...
Well, it's like a mobile microphone.
Yeah.
It basically records everything. And if that's the case, then why on earth are we allowing it to be even sold in this country?
I know.
If the car is going
and
to have
so many people have TikTok on their phones, which they just press accept on the terms without reading them.
Absolutely ridiculous.
I mean, their spying operation is huge. They are desperate to gather as much data about the West and I guess help plot our downfall best they can. Yet we buddy up to them and we say, oh, we'll buy all your wind turbines, we'll buy your solar
panels. And also Labour ministers in their droves keep going to China and keep visiting China. So I think it's the country that most ministers have been to out of all the other countries in the world. So there we are.
Yeah, and it's funny when they're on the opposition benches, they like to criticise the Tories for visiting and talking to countries that are, a bit dodgy.
Less than friendly, yeah, absolutely right. Chloe, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. We're nearly at the end of the hour. A few more songs for you. Starmer is a football fan, says Paula from Salford. So how about that football chant, you don't know what you're doing? That's a good one. Cliff says, how about Go Now from the Moody Blues? Or The Man Who Sold the World. Who Are You? Never mind, you're in anyway. And Nowhere Man by the Beatles. That's not bad either. This is, of course, Morning Glory. We've got lots more to do. Coming up in the next hour, we'll talk as well about Richard Tice and his plan to do away with what is being called the desecration of our countryside by the current current Labour plans, rather, to cover them with solar panels. That's what Ed Miliband wants to do. Also, we'll talk some more about the new border checks for jihadis, which are actually going on in the European Union. So many countries now, about 7 of the bigger countries in Europe, have actually set up proper border checks to try and stop an increasing threat from jihadis in the Middle East coming into Europe and committing terrorist acts. We, meanwhile, have got an open border policy, despite the one in, one out claim. Yesterday it was a few hundred in, none out. Brilliant. This is Talk. We'll see you after the news.
My message to people smugglers is this. I think smashing the gangs is a deterrent. Smash, 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 smash the gangs. Smash the people smuggling gangs.
People smuggling puns.
He couldn't even smash an avocado for a piece of toast.
Or the people... What would that... The people...
I think smashing the gangs is a deterrent. Well, it might be if you smashed any, if you found any.
The people smash... Those... The smash...
And he hasn't smashed anything. I mean, literally all he does is he smashes records every sort of couple of weeks, where more and more people come in a period of 24 hours.
Smash the gangs that are running this vile trade.
You're never going to smash the gangs. That's something that basically is impossible. The gangs are like the Hydra. You cut the head off and another 2 grow.
So I did write to ministers and say that I wasn't convinced that smashing the gangs was the right sort of way of thinking about things.
We will smash the gangs that undermine our security.
Keir Starmer has just tweeted 15 minutes ago. He says, I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source. Maybe I'll just read it all in his accent, shall I?
There is no return to freedom of movement. We have left the EU. I do not accept that prevents us working with other police units here, with prosecutors here, to smash the gangs.
Yeah. Well, sure, the smuggling gangs are absolutely quaking in their boots now. Keir Starmer's on their case. Solving this issue, smashing the gangs, is that the impossible dream, Tom?
It really seems beyond him at the minute, I have to say.
We're going to get the evil people smugglers and we're going to smash them and we're going to put them in jail. That will solve the migrant crisis. Prime Minister Keir Starmer's promise to smash the gangs has resulted in just 5 convictions. Hurrah for operating small boats.
So what he really wants to say is that this policy of smashing the gangs is a total and utter disaster. There isn't a cat in hell's chance that it's going to work.
It's crap. It's crap. That's what he's basically saying.
I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. Mark my words, I will take back control of our borders. That means cutting migration, ending the use of asylum hotels and ramping up our efforts to stop small boat crossings.
It's like a parallel universe, the real world, as told by the impressive David Bolt, and Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves' fantasy world.
We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. 3 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. We've got lots going on. James Price coming up in this hour. Richard Tice, of course, as well. He'll tell us about his view on the solar panels desecration. Story in the Telegraph this morning. Reformers saying they will not honour any amount of solar panels spread across the land, ruining the landscape, ruining the countryside, and he's threatening to pull subsidies if Reform win power. He sent a letter to Island Green Power, which is planning a £2 2,700-acre solar panel project. Meanwhile, we've got lots of different stories on the front pages this morning. Wealthier areas face big rises in council tax, it says on the front page of the Times. And of course, tax very much the order of the day. Starmer's pledge on tax thrown into chaos on the front page of the Telegraph. The Prime Minister refuses to rule out rises in VAT, income tax or national insurance to fix a £50 billion black hole, which is of course of their own making. Lots of stories and pictures as well about Border Force. Front page of the Times. Border Force brought dozens of migrants into Dover on the day that the one-in, one-out deal with France to reduce small boat crossings came into effect. Immigration lawyers say the poorly worded treaty could fall apart. Well, I've got some news for immigration lawyers. It's already fallen apart, as we said yesterday, and as we said the day before. The one-in, one-out policy is simply unworkable. Hundreds of people have been coming in this week, and none of them are leaving. So it's not one in, one out at all. They think they can call it something, and that will then be what it is. But that's not how the world works. Front page of The Sun has got Greg Wallace and John Turode on it. MasterChef airs with the Axed 2. BBC can't seem to get anything right. First of all, they fire these two guys, and then they decide to run the show that they've recorded before they got fired. And it's so badly edited, apparently, it doesn't make any sense. A shambles. Meanwhile, you've got breakfast TV presenter Charlie State, who's actually on this morning, being investigated for bullying. And, of course, there's another story about another female star, unnamed, from the BBC, who showed a terribly vile picture of some kind of piece of anatomy, it has to be said, to a junior producer who burst into tears and has complained about it. So the BBC are right in the firing line, as ever. 0344 499 1000. Meanwhile, you'll like this one. HMRC staff, the tax people, hold a class on the guilt of being British. That's just one of the things you can do as part of the HMRC race network. If you've got nothing better to do, you can watch it from 11 a.m. until 12 noon on the race network. Apparently it covers subjects such as the complexity of being South Asian and British, covering topics including the emotional weight of colonial history and inherited trauma. I've got some inherited trauma from the bloody tax bill I paid in July. How about that? 5 minutes past 7, 0344 499 1000. We're also asking for your favourite Starmer songs. This one from the Kaiser Chiefs. I predict a riot, says Ginny. Very good. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Oh, we forgot to play Miles, didn't we? The voice note. Should we ever listen to Miles?
Hi, Mike. Great show. Good morning. I'm just wondering, have you heard anything about them detaining any migrants yet? Like they said for the one in, one out, they said they're going to detain people. Have they detained anybody yet?
No, I think it's a straight answer. They haven't detained anyone because they haven't got anywhere to put them. They've got no detention centres. How are you going to detain people if you haven't got a detention centre? What are you going to do? You're going to stand over there for a while? I'm just going to detain you for a bit until I can figure out what to do with you. Let's talk to James Price, former government advisor, of course, a man who I'm sure will share my rather bemused look at this idea of one in, one out. And they're now talking about putting taxes up again. James, very good morning to you.
Oh, is it a good morning with all of this stuff happening? It's good to see you at least, my friend.
Yes, indeed. Well, I mean, I find myself smiling. I know that many people are getting sort of to the end of their tether with all this stuff and they're getting quite angry about it. But my attitude is merely to find it amusing. And I know it's not amusing for so many people in this country because it's driving people mad. But it's the only way you can deal with it on a daily basis without going insane.
Yeah, absolutely right. And you're right. The one crumb of hope, the one small morsel of silver lining that we've got is that I think that with another 4 years of this lot, there will never, ever again, surely, be a socialist government elected in this country, right?
No.
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And then we had Blair, goodness knows. And now we've got this lot of absolute muppets. I don't think we'll ever be electing a left-wing government in this country ever again at this rate.
No, and I think, as we say on a regular basis, nobody thought they'd be this bad. But every day it does go from bad to worse. I mean, yesterday, Keir Starmer was out and about talking to children with just as much woodenness and stiffness as you can see when he talks to adults. Have a look at this, right? This is about him talking about music.
Hello.
So what are you playing?
Roll,
You're playing...
roll your boat.
OK. Shall we have a go? Are you doing that from memory?
Oh, yeah. Purple.
So C and then G. So you've got C and G.
So just here, this chord should have been a C. So
Listen to music, and I mean, it's a big part of my life in the sense I love it.
It's a big part of my life in the sense that I love it. He's never mentioned music ever. I know he did go to a private music school when he was a child, which was rather against his supposed background of socialism, right? And he went to this, I think he got a scholarship to this fee-paying school, which was a very, very nice place somewhere down in Surrey. And we've been asking people today for what his favourite song might be. Because, you know, he famously doesn't have a favourite book, doesn't have a favourite poem, doesn't have a favourite film. So I don't know what favourite piece of music he would have. A couple have said, well, we've got loads of them coming in. Road to Nowhere by Talking Heads, says Daryl. How about Tragedy from Jim in the Netherlands? How about Hotel California from Bruce? You know, the list goes on and on. The man is just a sort of national mockery now, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. He doesn't dream either, I think he said in the same interview where he admitted he doesn't have a favourite book or anything like that. I mean, I know that we're living in a nightmare, but I think that's a bit on the nose even for him.
It really is.
Maybe my version of his favourite song would be a slight reworking of that great Smiths song, and in this case it would be This Charmless Man.
Yes, absolutely. That's a good one. But yeah, he really is. And we've got him now saying we might have to put taxes up in the autumn. He was asked about tax rises, right? And again, he's come up with a new phrase here, because you know we've been assailed with this working people thing that he's been saying for ages. He's now come up with a new one. See if you can spot it right at the end.
In the autumn, we'll get the full forecasts and obviously set out our budget. The focus will be living standards, and we will build on what we've done in the first year of this government. We've stabilised the economy, and that means interest rates have been cut now 4 times. And for anybody watching this on a mortgage, that makes a huge difference on a monthly basis to how much they pay. In the first year, we've raised wages as well, both in the private sector plus the minimum wage, which means people have got a bit more money coming into their pocket. And so at this stage, that'll all be set out in the budget, but the focus will very much be on living standards and making sure people feel better off. Some of the figures that have been put out are not figures that I recognise, but the budget won't be until later in the year, and that's why we'll have the forecast then, and we'll set out our plans. What's really important is that I'm very clear about our focus, which will be on living standards and making sure that people feel better off, partly because more money is coming into their pocket in the first place through better wages, and partly because we're bearing down on costs like mortgages and other costs to everyday families.
Can you spot the new phrase?
Is this the living standards idea?
No, it's everyday families.
Oh, everyday family.
What's an everyday family?
Oh, it's so mindless that it actually went in one ear and out the other for me.
Well, but the first time we played that out the first time we played that out this morning, I was trying to sort of count the seconds, because he literally says nothing. He's able to speak for about a minute and a bit while making no sense at all and saying nothing at all.
Yeah, I must admit, I think I nodded off at one point as he was speaking there. But there is a real consequence to all this, which is that you don't trust anything that he says.
Right.
He comes out and makes speeches. Do you remember the Island of Strangers speech from a few months ago? It was actually very good in parts, right? He said the bit that no left-wing leader has said for a long time, which is, huge amounts of mass migration and not enriching British culture, or not having the state trying to push British culture, have turned us in to an island of strangers.
Yeah.
Anyone that's ever visited London, let alone lives here, will know that's true here, as it is in many cities.
Yeah.
He comes out a few weeks later saying, oh, yeah, I didn't actually really read the speech until I gave it, and I regret that now.
Yeah, and he wished he'd never said it. And it's the only thing he's ever said that actually was any good, to be fair.
Yeah. Absolutely right. And as a politician, you're not supposed to admit that you don't write your own speeches, let alone that you don't even read them before delivering them. I mean, it would explain the very wooden delivery of the speeches that he used. But how do you even compete against someone like this, who's just such a kind of closed-off unit? He doesn't dream, doesn't read, all the rest of it. So how is it that we're supposed to expect to believe anything he says when he's like, oh, I'm probably maybe not any more taxes? We definitely know that taxes are going up, because that's all socialists know how to do. do. They only have one lever. It's more state control, more immiseration of the people that live here by stealing more of their hard-earned money to give it increasingly to foreigners who come here not to work. How are we supposed to believe anything this man says?
Yeah, exactly right. And all that you get, the message is you know, we inherited this terrible situation. Well, even if it was true, which it isn't, that they inherited a £22 billion black hole, well, who's to blame for the amount that they've now put on to make it up to 50, you know, which is by any measure another 28 billion. Surely that must be their fault then.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. Look, the fundamentals of all this are that they came in, and actually Rachel Reeves said when she was in opposition, we're not going to do that naughty thing that new governments do, where I promise not to do anything now and then get into government and say, oh, blimey, the books are much worse than I actually thought they were going to be. We'll have to be even worse. And then she goes and does the thing she promised not to do, talking the country down, inventing this black hole. In the process, by the way, creating it because she's scared off huge amounts of investment. Loads of rich people and not rich people, frankly, are emigrating and leaving to other places where the streets are safer and the taxes are lower. And then what? More tax. And we know that tax doesn't lead to prosperity. Winston Churchill said that trying to tax your way to prosperity is like a man standing in a bucket and trying to pull himself up by the handle.
Exactly right. Well, just as you mentioned, Rachel Reeves, we've got a little montage for you here on how she's not going to come back for taxes.
I'm really clear. I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes. And that is why, at this budget, we did wipe the slate clean. What the budget in October did was draw a line under the economic and financial mismanagement of the Conservative government. I've now put our public finances in order, so never again will I have to do a budget like I did in October. Our public finances are now on a firm footing. We have now set the public spending envelope for this Parliament. We don't need to come back and ask for more. We've now set that. We're going to do a zero-based review to make sure we get value for money for every pound that taxpayers' money spent. In that budget, I've tried to fix the foundations and wipe the slate clean.
But it's so 1.3% year after next, for example. And that implies, doesn't it, that you're going to have to come back and ask for yet more tax rises?
Absolutely not. We have now set the envelope of spending for this Parliament and we're going to live within our means.
Yeah, we're going to live within our means. I think they've shredded that particular envelope. I'm not quite sure what's happened to it. There's another one here from Pat McFadden, who said on the 4th of June of last year, Rishi Sunak's claims about Labour and tax are categorically untrue. Labour will not put up taxes on working people. They're just a collection of liars, aren't they?
Yeah, well, maybe they won't put them up on working people. What about the everyday families? I think if you're listening and you're a non-everyday family, then watch out because you're definitely getting stung for a big tax hike. It's the fact that she can't speak outside of platitudes as well, right? We've drawn a line under this spending envelope. You know, Mike, you're a good writer. When you write stuff, you abide by some of George Orwell's rules for writing and don't use boring, tired old cliches. Right. It's all these people can think in the 14 years that they were in opposition, felt like none of them have ever read a single book. None of them have ever thought about a single novel or new idea. It's always, you know, if it moves, tax it. If it doesn't move, subsidize it. Right? And then if it still doesn't move, nationalize it and then make it even worse. Yes. It's really depressing when you see what other countries are now getting to do. And in the United States of America, the exciting things they're doing.
Well, look at we just saw a £600 billion investment from Apple, who have come back from China. You know, the CEO was standing with Trump yesterday. 600 billion quid, just one company.
Yeah, it's absolutely extraordinary what can be done. And actually, some of the stuff the Trump administration is doing, you would think would be grist for a Labour Party mill, right? Reindustrialising, onshoring jobs again, all this kind of stuff. But we're doing the opposite. We're even stopping farmers from growing food in England so that you can plaster it with the solar panels I know you're going to talk about later. And that's probably why they're putting the farmers out of work, to have more space for the solar panels, whilst we're not generating electricity in all sorts of other ways. The reason that this matters, and that I think the next election that comes is probably so existential, I think we've only got one shot left to turn some of this around. If you look at the scale of debt that Britain has, we now spend a huge amount, something like £115 billion every year, just to service the debt that we've got. And that is a number that's growing every time. We're not paying down that debt. That's just to keep running to stand still. £115 billion a year. It's about the third biggest line item after welfare and pensions and then the NHS. And that's growing every year. And as that grows and we owe more and more money, the market is less likely to borrow, to lend us any more of it. And it means less money that you've got to spend on defence as the world gets more dangerous, on education as Labour wrecks that, on the NHS as they fail to get to grips with that. At some point, the music will stop and that we will become uninvestable. Just at the time when Labour has scared all the rich people away, everybody else is too dejected to bother working because they haven't raised those tax thresholds, and many millions more people are paying higher rates of tax than they were ever supposed to. And we've still got these numpties in charge for a few more years. That is a really a cruel state to leave the country in for whichever government comes along next.
Absolutely.
To try and fix it.
And you can be sure when the music stops, there won't be any chairs either, because they'll have sold all of those off for firewood to keep the home fires burning, for heaven's sake. James, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Brilliant. James Price, former government advisor there, making a great deal of sense, as he always does, talking about the state of our nation. Absolutely ridiculous. Let's get a voice note from Lee.
Morning, Mike. Lee from Chelmsford. We've got absolutely no chance of getting rid of any of these illegal immigrants. The lawyers and solicitors will have a field day. Maybe we can ask the expertise of the business secretary, Mr. Jonathan Reynolds. Being a former solicitor, I'm sure he's got all the answers. Anyway, great show.
Former solicitor Jonathan Reynolds, yeah, the fake solicitor. Add to the list the roll call of shame of these Labour ministers, right? Remember Louise Haigh? She was the Secretary of State for Transport. She came in only to be dismissed when it was discovered that she'd actually got a conviction for fraud. Unfortunately, she's had a predilection to reporting phones being stolen, even though they hadn't been. So she's now sitting on the back benches. Tulip Sadiq, remember her? She was, of course, the corruption minister, very good close friend of Keir Starmer's. She had to step down because she's now been accused of, you guessed it, corruption by the Bangladeshi government, and she's likely to face a trial there. This morning's great move by one of the ministers in the Labour government is one woman called Rushanara Ali, who's apparently Labour's Minister for Homelessness. She's just made a load of people homeless by kicking them out of her house because she wanted to rent it for a lot more money. She hiked the property price to £700 more. £4,000 a month she's charging for a house that she owns in London. Labour's making it illegal for landlords to do that, but she's doing it anyway. Absolutely fantastic. Who can forget Rachel Reeves, of course, the economist's economist. I'm an economist. I went to the London School of Economics to study economics. If I was the London School of Economics, I'd be suing her for naming them and causing her to crash the economy. Because if it's down to them teaching her how to be an economist, I don't think it's much of a recommendation, to be honest. Coming up, we're going to speak to, of course, Richard Tice, the Deputy Leader of the Reform Party. He's talking about the desecration of our land with solar panels being planted absolutely everywhere. If Reform get in, they're going to completely and utterly trash that, chuck it in the bin. He's coming next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:24. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. We've been getting loads and loads of your voice notes coming through this morning, so let's have a listen to what we've been hearing so far.
Things can only get better, can only get better.
Whatever you say, whatever you do, we don't believe it. We just want you out for good.
Rock the boat, don't rock the boat, baby.
Roll, roll, roll your boat gently down the stream. If you're an illegal immigrant, you're about to reach your dream.
Very good. There's definitely a maritime feel to some of these songs. Keir Starmer said yesterday to some children that he was talking to that the music was very important to him and it was very much a thing that he thought about all the time. He's never said that before, so we're asking for your favourite songs of Keir Starmer's. Lightning Seeds, Life of Riley, says Christopher, applicable only for immigrants, and Bucks Fizz, The Land of Make-Believe. That's a good one. Let's talk to Richard Tice, who is here, of course, Deputy Leader of Reform UK. Richard, very good morning to you.
Well, good morning, and your listeners and viewers will be pleased to know that I would not be breaking out into song. And frankly, I'm not sure that there's much to be celebrating at all, given the state of the nation as you've been talking about this morning. And I, as you've just touched on, I've been alerting the solar farm developers, Mike, who want to desecrate hundreds and hundreds of square miles of our glorious British countryside and farmland with these revolting solar panels. Yeah. And I've made it very clear to them that there's no mandate for this whatsoever. In Lincolnshire alone, just get this, there are plans for about 100 square miles of solar farms. Some villages are going to be completely and utterly surrounded by solar panels, alongside which will be these very dangerous battery energy storage systems that when they catch fire, the fire brigade can't put out. As the Lincolnshire Fire Brigade confirmed to us in a letter, they just have to just watch. And then they produce toxic fumes and contaminants into the soil. So we don't want this.
No. It's absolutely outrageous, isn't it? Because, as you say, there's no mandate for it. Nobody was asked about this. And what about this pledge that the Labour government made that we won't be buying any solar panels from China if they've been made by slave labour? Well, it doesn't seem to me as though they've found anywhere else to get them, have they?
There are very few other places that make solar panels at scale. And the great irony, of course, and China have been very clever at this, is that they're building coal-fired power stations to make lots of cheap electricity in order to produce solar panels and wind turbines much cheaper than anybody else, sometimes allegedly using slave labour. I suspect there's no real doubt about that. And people are left with no choice. And so the absolute irony that we are, this government wants to cover our land with lots of solar panels, produced with slave labour, produced using coal-fired power stations. I mean, the whole thing is completely and utterly absurd. Solar panels on roofs, fine, you make a very strong argument and sell the electricity to the occupier underneath. That can ease the pressure on the national grid. But covering our productive farmland that we should be using to grow food is absolute insanity.
Yeah. And are they acquiring this land by hook or by crook? I mean, how is that process working? Because these people that you've written to, the Island Green Power people, which is planning a 2,700-acre project, apparently, I mean, how are they getting hold of the land?
Well, primarily they lease the land from farmers, and we've made it very clear to the developers and their shareholders and investors, and indeed their lenders, that we will use every lever at our disposal under a reform government to stop the subsidies and to force them to think again. In other words, don't invest in the first place. But they can also use it now transpires, what they call compulsory purchase powers. So that if a particular landowner doesn't want to sell out or lease out to these solar farm developers, and that's in a sort of an important part within a bigger planned solar farm, then it turns out these developers can compulsory purchase that land. And I mean, that's just doubling down on the wrong, frankly.
Yeah, and I was told this some months ago, and I don't know whether you've had an opportunity to look into it. I can't remember if we spoke about it before, but there's a sort of loophole in the law on rural land, apparently, where if you've had the land occupied by solar panels and used as a solar panel sort of field, if you like, for a long enough period, that can then change the use of the land, and it can then cease to be arable land, and it can then be building land, and you can actually then build houses on it.
Yes, there have been those allegations, and I think the answer is that is a grey area that's unknown. I mean, it's obviously a ridiculous statement, but some people are very concerned about that. Frankly, we should be concerned about anything under this deeply socialist government. I'm actually most concerned about stories that I'm reading into where the land under these solar panels, if it's like sort of left like that for 20, 25 years, it becomes completely organically dead. And therefore, even if the solar panels were removed, it would take many years for it to be brought back into agricultural use. And possibility of contaminants coming off from the rain off the solar panels onto the soil. These are very serious concerns that need to be clarified. We just know so little about this. What we do know is that we need to be producing more of our own food. And if you put these hundreds of square miles of solar farms in Norfolk, Suffolk, Lincolnshire and many other places, then you're doing the opposite of food security.
It's absolutely ridiculous. Let's talk a little bit about the other problem for this government, this ridiculous one-in, one-out scenario, which is so ludicrous now that it's fallen apart literally before their very eyes. I mean, it fell apart pretty much as soon as they announced it. Yesterday, the Daily Mail were in Gravelines over in Calais, very close to Calais, and they described what looks like a sort of dingy rush hour, which goes on from about 7 a.m. Until about 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, where one canoe, one dinghy after another sort of turns up, people pile on it, and off it goes to Britain. And so on the first day of this one-in, one-out, it looks as though at the very least dozens, possibly hundreds came, and nobody left.
As you say, it appears that it's hundreds in every day and none out at all, particularly when we now discover that our friends, the lefty, lovey human rights lawyers, if they can lodge a human rights claim here in the UK for someone who arrives, then they don't now qualify under this new absurd Labour scheme. So the whole thing is a complete and utter farce. And here we are a year later. We know that the migrant numbers so far this year in 2025 are up about 50% compared to last year. And what you've just shown there yesterday, hundreds more coming to the UK, shows there's no deterrent factor whatsoever. Actually, we're becoming an ever greater, ever larger magnet. And the British people have had enough. I don't know where this ends, but it's not going to end well. It really isn't. People are raging mad. And there was just yesterday, the gendarmes were on the beach, waving them off. Funny, isn't it, that a few weeks ago, the BBC happened to be on the beach, and that was the one day where a gendarme happened to put a knife into one of the boats in order to deflate it. Why aren't they doing that every day, all day, to stop these boats?
I know.
Or was it just a complete stitch-up picture made up to suit the Prime Minister and President Macron?
Yes, it was definitely a stunt, because, I mean, I was saying this week, I wrote a piece in The Sun yesterday, that this is actually going to encourage more migrants to come, not fewer, because what you're going to now get is people who actually get to France and apply legally through an online application form to get asylum in this country. And as long as they can say that they've got somebody that they know here, or they've got family here, they're fleeing some kind of terrible situation, they will be invited in to Britain, and they won't have to bother getting on a dinghy. They'll just be able to come legally.
The whole thing is so absurd. It's truly unbelievable. And where does this end? The irony now where you've got people in the UK, slightly ironically, saying they want to take a one-way ticket to France so that they can apply, and then they can come back and get free accommodation, free heating, and
a credit card,
free food. I mean, it's utterly ludicrous. And there's only one way you stop this. That is, we leave the ECHR, we rip up the Human Rights Act, so these human rights lawyers can't carry on with their with their ridiculous trade. And we've got to pick up and safely take back a variant of what the Australians did. We know it works. The Australians successfully did it. And we know we're entitled to do it under the United Nations 1982 Convention of the Law at Sea Treaty, which I have read cover to cover.
And you've said this before, and people who challenge you end up having to give up because they don't know the law. Let's talk about what Starmer says now, though, about taxes as well, because just before we let you go, he was talking yesterday about the fact that he can't tell us yet whether there's going to be any taxes, but he can tell us what his focus is going to be on. Have a look.
The focus will be living standards, and we will build on what we've done in the first year of this government, but the focus will very much be on living standards and making sure people feel better off. What's really important is that I'm very clear about our focus, which will be on living standards and making sure that people feel better off, partly because more money is coming into their pocket in the first place through better wages, and partly because we're bearing down on costs like mortgages and other costs to everyday families.
Yeah, we've got a new phrase for you. Everyday families, Richard, that's the new one.
Well, I'm going to focus. I really am going to focus, very focused, on the issue of taxes. If we focus on taxes, Mike, then we can focus on making people better off.
Yeah.
I mean, what on earth is he talking about? Saying that he's stabilised the economy.
Well,
the economy is going down the tubes.
Oh, exactly.
Jobs, hundreds of thousands of jobs are being destroyed. I've got a theme park in Skegness in the middle of holiday season, get this, that's closed 2 days a week because of the national insurance increases, because of the cost of energy. I tell you what, that theme park owner's focus is to stop losing money.
Yeah.
And we've got a black hole that is re-emerging in the economy. They're going to have to put taxes up ever more. You've got bond markets that I can tell you are very focused on the state of their concerns about the British economy. And it's very, very fragile.
Yeah.
It really is. And that's all because they've ruined it. They've done the opposite of what we should be doing. We should be cutting wasteful government spending, of which there is vast, vast amounts, cutting daft regulations. That creates the conditions for growth. And when you've got growth emerging, then you can have performance-related tax cuts. That's how you get the economy growing back to 2.5%, 3.5%. like we had in the 80s and 90s. And by the way, that was the time when we had cheap energy, because guess what? We were using oil and gas, not solar and wind.
I know. It's an absolute shambles, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. Richard, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Richard Tice, Deputy Leader of Reform UK. Let's get a voice note from Darren.
Good morning, Mike. It's Darren here from Carmarthenshire. Hope you're well. This weekend, Mike, I've got some exciting plans. I'm actually going out for a meal with Sir Keir Starmer, Mike, so that should be a lot of fun. I just sent him a text this morning, Mike, to see where he wanted to go for a meal, and he said he didn't mind. He's got no preference with food whatsoever, he said, Mike. As long as they do crusty rolls, Mike. He didn't want butter, didn't need any butter on the roll. And tap water, he said. So as long as they provide those, Mike, he said he doesn't care where he goes for a meal. So I'll let you know how it goes.
Interesting. Darren, thank you very much indeed. Bizarrely, I never mentioned this actually, there was a strange tweet that was put out a couple of days ago by a councillor from West Malling down there in Kent, because Starmer popped into an Indian curry restaurant on his way from somewhere to somewhere, and there was a very odd picture of him standing with his arm around one of the guys in the restaurant, and I think it was called what was it called, Turmeric Square, I think it was called, and then suddenly mysteriously the tweet disappeared, almost as though somebody from the Prime Minister's office had rung up and said, get that down straight away, we don't want anybody knowing he was there, and that picture looks ridiculous, and it did. We might put it out later, actually, because, of course, I screen grabbed it, so just for posterity, just in case. We might do a bit of that. Morning, Mike, says somebody from Scotland. Please tell me how Starmer and Reeves are still in power when they're crashing the economy and Liz Truss got outed straight away. This is madness. P.S. My wife works for HMRC. They spend 90% of their time in meetings. Yeah, presumably studying British guilt. That's on the front pages this morning as well. 7:38.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Mike Graham here. It's 7:40. Let's get a voice note from Pete on tax.
Keir Starmer says that he doesn't recognise some of the figures coming in. No, that's because he's Chancellor of the Exchequer in himself, because they don't know what they're doing, do they? They can't add up. And also, making you feel like you're better off, that isn't exactly making you better off, is it? Because they're robbing you with one hand, they give them one hand and robbing you with the other.
It's very true. Absolutely right, because it's the kind of thing Starmer says all the time. We want to make people feel better off. No, they don't. They want to be better off. Steve says this: I've never seen a more complete load of babbling cobblers than Starmer gave yesterday, building on the work of the first year. That will be buggering up the country and economy even more then. That's exactly what I thought, Steve, when he's going, oh yeah, we're building on what we did in the first year. Heaven help us if it's getting worse than that, for heaven's sake. Let's talk to Ryan Harris, journalist and reporter. Over in America, things seem to be going quite a lot better, actually. And yesterday, US envoy Steve Witkoff met Vladimir Putin. Trump had a conversation, I think, with him as well, or is hoping to. And he's expected to maybe meet him as early as next week. Let's find out what's going on. Ryan, very good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Mike.
Thank you very much for joining us. So, some progress seems to be made yesterday. What can you tell us?
Well, we have some actually just vague details from both sides. Mr. Witkoff, as you can see from the video there, met directly with Vladimir Putin at the Kremlin there. Donald Trump came out and also in a call with European allies and said, it was very productive talks. The Kremlin put out a very vague statement and said that, the talks were constructive. But as for a direct meeting between Putin and Trump, Donald Trump was talking about that and said that's certainly a possibility. And of course, there's talk that, it could be as soon as next week. But those kinds of summits take time to put on. So I don't expect we'll see that in the next few days. Right. But that is some progress. And, Donald Trump has also talked about and spoke with Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, and is trying to work out some three-way talks to end the war that he, of course, promised to end on the first day of his presidency. That's been an awfully long day. It's been a 6-month day. Yeah. We're on the way. But I have to tell you, Mike, I'm a little bit skeptical because, a lot of times with Vladimir Putin, this is nothing more than talk just to mollify the people who are coming at him.
Yeah. And where would a summit like that be held? Because I'm assuming that Trump wouldn't travel to Moscow, and I'm assuming that Putin wouldn't travel to Washington. So would they choose like a neutral venue like Dubai or something like that?
Well, I would think Geneva would probably be high on the list, or someplace in Western Europe, although, as I've been listening to this all day long, a couple of the pundits suggested that, it would be good if Vladimir Putin hosted Donald Trump at the Kremlin. It would certainly be interesting to see, not as interesting as Donald Trump crossing the line into the DMZ to meet with Kim Jong-un, but, the Kremlin is a rather spectacular looking place, so it would be a great venue. But I mean, it could be anywhere. And to your point, I think a neutral site close enough by that not only Vladimir Putin, but for future talks, Volodymyr Zelensky, could get there relatively easily, I think would be the wise choice.
Right. I mean, in the end, I suppose the difficulty here is that Putin doesn't really want to do any kind of settlement with Ukraine, does he? He doesn't really want Ukraine to be a bother to him. He would rather just wipe them out.
No, and to my earlier point about, making these comments just to mollify the people that, come at him to try to get him to wind down this war. We've all watched Vladimir Putin over the years. He's not going to back down. I mean, as these deadlines have been set, and, tomorrow, United States time is essentially the latest deadline that Donald Trump set for Putin for a ceasefire. What we see is Putin ramping up the war. Now, to be fair, the Ukrainians have as well. They've been firing drones and attacking deep inside Russian territory. But we've seen like Kyiv get hammered in recent days. In fact, I believe the death toll, unfortunately, just in Kyiv in the past few days is up to 32. So I think it's all. I mean, honestly, Mike, I think we would have to be blind or crazy not to think that Vladimir Putin wants to achieve his goal of bringing Ukraine back to Russia, getting it under Russian control. And it wouldn't surprise me if he didn't want to do that with other former Soviet states. I mean, he is a former KGB guy. And, really, honestly, it makes sense that he would want to try to rebuild the old Soviet Union. But I just can't see him doing anything but digging in his heels.
Because one of the interesting things I was reading about yesterday was the price of oil and the amount of oil actually that Russia is producing and selling. Because one of the things that Trump did yesterday was he increased the tariffs on India, didn't he? Because they're still buying oil from Russia. But I was reading a piece that was written by somebody saying basically that the oil price was stabilised by the fact that Joe Biden told India to buy Russian oil. And now Trump, of course, is telling them not to buy Russian oil. So it's all a bit of a confusing picture.
Well, I don't know how true it is. I can't imagine any U.S. president, even Joe Biden, saying, hey, go ahead and buy Russian oil when we're trying to put economic sanctions on them. And those sanctions have been there for years, since before Donald Trump returned to office. And, this tariff on India is essentially a secondary sanction on Russia, because if they can interfere in some way with the Indian economy and get them to back off of buying Russian oil, that hurts Russia. And, as Putin runs out of money, that I think would be the one of the biggest motivations for him to bring the war to a close or try to reach some sort of peace agreement. But, it's... Oh gosh, Mike, as you know, with the oil market too, prices, it's one of the few true global markets.
Yeah.
So
Well,
what
really
happens with
again,
oil, Yeah,
I was going to say, sorry, what I also learned yesterday was that the G7 have put a cap on the amount of money that Russia can sell its oil at, which kind of limits the profits that Putin can make. So it's all a very kind of complicated scenario. And apparently the need for the global market to have Russian oil, because it keeps the prices down, is what basically America's always wanted.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, as to your point, as Russian oil stops its flow, prices will go up for us. And I suspect that that would raise the ire of a lot of folks here in the United States, where we're already struggling. I mean, I went to a place just today that sells cheap petrol and paid more than $4 a gallon for it. And we've seen it here in California as high as $6 a gallon, with talk of it going up to $8 a gallon. So if we start monkeying around with the oil market, and Vladimir Putin isn't going to give us what we want in terms of peace with Ukraine, Donald Trump's going to have himself a domestic political problem.
Yeah, indeed. Ryan, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Ryan Harris, journalist over in the US of A. Lots of you giving me messages that we've got to get to, and we have got loads here. This one from M, who says, good morning, Mike. The government keeps saying smash the gangs due to the horrendous misery they are causing. Tell me who on earth are miserable? The gangs, the migrants, both are extremely happy. Or do they mean the British taxpayers? Well, exactly right. Morning, Mike, says Jim. Higher council tax? No way. We already cough up 35 grand for living in a jerry-built ex-farm workers' bungalow, blighted badly by HS2, to a council which rarely mows the verges and blows zillions on ruddy cycle lanes and oversees the wrecking of Shakespeare's leafy lanes of Warwickshire. Unbelievable stuff. So what, you're paying that much money in council tax? 35 grand in council tax? That's extraordinary. Morning, Mike. Starmer is taking credit for interest rates coming down. Funny how he doesn't mention inflation going up, says Dave in Aberdeen. Yeah, there's talk that the rates may come down again today, but we'll keep you abreast of that, of course, as it happens. Alan in Middlesbrough has got a couple of songs for Starmer. How about The Two Tears of a Clown? Very good. I like that, by The Miracles. Beaches by Stranglers. And a voice note now from Jack.
Good morning, Mike. In regards to Keir Starmer's favourite song, what about Welcome to the Hotels Down in Dover?
Welcome to the Hotels Down in Dover. Very good. It's coming up to a very nearly 10 minutes to 8. I don't know where the time is going this morning. I consider myself to be one of Starmer's everyday people, says Peter in Norwich. The arrogance of this idiot is unbelievable. He only just stops short of calling us the ordinary people, you know, the kind who actually need to work for a living, pay for their own tickets to watch the footy, live next door to an HMO, need to protect their family from the island of strangers he allows in. Give me strength. Yeah, well, don't forget, obviously his everyday family has done rather well for themselves, because Mrs Starmer and 2 or 3 members of the family got a nice day out at Ascot Racecourse the other day, and he had to declare it as a freebie, 650 quid's worth. It's all right for some, isn't it? What's the bet that it happens again before the end of the summer? This is Talk.
We have far too much debt now, which effectively means that other people own our debt, and we are at their behest rather than at
OK,
our own.
what are we going to do about it, Rupert? I don't want to talk esoterically about it. I want to know what we're going to do about it.
Julia, there's only one thing to do, and that is to radically pursue a Thatcherite agenda of deregulation, massive cuts in the state, and ultimately we've got to empower the private sector.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:54. Phil in Surrey says, keep up the good work, Mike. Maybe the one-in, one-out policy is actually to do with Starmer's ministers once they get found out to be complete charlatans. Well, there could be that. And Patricia says this, Keir Starmer is a donkey. Did that child just play the tune Row, Row, Row Your Boat? Even children are making fun of him now. Plonker. Rodney! It's true. That is the song that the kid was playing. Let's speak to now Professor Rob Galloway, the NHS consultant. Story on the front page of the Times today says 1 in 5 doctors in the NHS are sick of Britain and they want to leave. Well, we're all sick of it, but it's not our fault. Oh, some of us are sick of doctors as well. Rob, very good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Not at all. What's wrong with doctors in this country? They're always moaning. You know, they train for years and years and years, and then they get a job that they expected to get, and then they say they don't like the terms and conditions, they don't like how hard they have to work, and they don't think they're making enough money.
I think the main problem is the way that they have to work in terms of their rotas, not knowing when they're going to work, but also the job stability. What people don't realise is they get a job for the first couple of years as a junior doctor and a foundation year 1 and foundation year 2. And then actually there's not a guaranteed or a planned pathway for them to become either a GP or a consultant. And so there is a lot of junior doctors who've qualified, done their foundation years. We've spent a lot of money training them. They spent a lot of money getting trained. They're very, very good doctors. And there is no training scheme for them to go into. There's no plan to get them to become a consultant or a GP. Or even when they've qualified as a GP now, there is GP unemployment. And so we've got to think about the money we are wasting as a country training these people and then not having jobs for them.
Has that changed then somehow? Did it used to be better?
There used to be, in many ways, there used to be you guaranteed a job, you qualified as a doctor, and you'd be guaranteed getting the way through to consultant. There's a lack of doctors. Now, there is no plan of what to do with a lot of the medical students we've trained as doctors.
And why is that then?
Very, very poor planning from people. The people like Health Education England have utterly let down the country in many ways. So we are investing so much in training these medical students. So I'm involved in a lot of training medical students and training the first couple of years. Once they've got the first couple of years, there should be pathways for them to become GPs, consultants, but there is not enough training programs. And I know people talk about the salaries, etc., but I don't think that's the main issue. I think the main issue is when they're at work, there's a lack of autonomy from a lot of systems. A lot of hospitals just give them a blank rolling rota, and that's what they've got to work.
But when you're training them, right, do you not have these conversations? Do they not ask you what's it going to be like? You know, because they're investing in quite a lot of years in their training. They're investing in quite a lot of money. They're borrowing quite a lot of money. I would imagine if that was me, I'd be asking, so how is this going to work then for me? What happens to me after the first 2 years? What happens after the first 5 years? You know, do they not ask those questions? Do they not know what it's like?
Yeah, and they are very scared. And a lot of them are going to Australia or overseas because there is not the planning of what we're doing. And also, in the last few years, we've opened up this training market to doctors from everywhere. And so there's a lot of really good UK doctors who cannot get jobs. And it's, you know, that has changed when they started.
But I thought we had a shortage of doctors, didn't we?
That is incorrect now.
So we don't have a shortage of doctors?
What we've got is we've got a shortage of jobs for doctors. So we've invested ridiculous amount of monies in things like physicians' associates who are there to...
But the government's always telling us we haven't got enough doctors, and that's why there's a strain on the number of doctors that are actually working, because if we had more doctors, they wouldn't be so strained.
There is a strain on the number of doctors employed. So if you have a look, we've got GPs who are unemployed at the moment. It is a crazy health system where we're organising the training of junior doctors, and there is the doctors at the moment in the UK at junior level, but there is not the training schemes for them to go into. That is why so many of them are locuming or leaving the NHS or considering leaving, because they've not got that pathway to go on further in their career. So it's a guaranteed job for the first 2 years after they qualify, and then it's not.
So who fixes this then? Who fixes it?
It's a government issue. It's a government issue that they need to, they need to sit down and work out what do we do, how do we train the next generation of consultants? Because it takes, after medical school, 10 years roughly to become a consultant. So my training was 6 years of medical school, 10 years to become a consultant. And when I was training, there was a pathway. Now there is basically about 3 people applying for every training post to become a consultant or a GP. And even when they get there, there is unemployment. So we've got consultants who've trained up as A&E consultants who are struggling to get jobs now. We need to think...
But yet you still need more doctors. So the whole system is kaput, really, by the sounds of it.
What we're doing is we're training junior doctors, then they're leaving. Then we're employing doctors from overseas, where actually if we could retain our own doctors, it would be better. And actually we're putting the money into things like physician associates who aren't, can't make those crucial decisions, because the difference between a doctor and, say, a physician associate is a doctor is a risk-statistician. They're the ones who can actually say, this patient doesn't need to come to hospital. Because the problem with what we're going on about the NHS, we say we need more and more doctors, more and more tests, more and more everything. Actually, what we need to do is reduce demand, realise when we shouldn't be treating people, when we don't need to do tests.
But what's the BMA's role in all this then? Shouldn't they be helping to make this system better?
The BMA... that is for the government and the BMA to try and sort this out. The BMA ultimately is a trade union about pay. What we need is to look at the Royal College.
But they're always going on about conditions as well. Surely they should be coming up with a pathway, if you want to call it that, for making it easier for doctors to get to the places you want them to get to. But I think the BMA also are an impediment here, aren't they? Because they don't want there to be too many doctors.
Well, they are arguing that they want, one of their policies is to increase the number of training jobs. They don't want their members to not have jobs to go to, and that is what ultimately is happening. And not only there's not enough jobs for them to go to, when they do get jobs, it's so bad in many ways. The rotas are really badly organised. You've got junior doctors trying to get leave for their weddings and told, no, it's impossible, or you've got to ask us again in 6 months' time, because that's when their rotation starts.
The whole thing's an absolute mess. I mean, you think doctors are supposed to be intelligent people. You sort it out. It should be able to be done. Professor Rob Galloway, thank you very much indeed. We've got to run. Brian in Cheshire says, Mike, what about Ronan Keating's when you say nothing at all for two-tier Keir? Absolutely. Michael says, Starmer must have been on the Kamala Harris word salad. Yeah, it does make you wonder, doesn't it? Absolutely incredible stuff. Coming up, Peter Hitchens in the next hour. We've got loads more of your calls as well. This is, of course, Morning Glory. We'll be back after the news.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, say now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. 8 minutes, no, it's 4 minutes past 8. That's not the other way around. It's easy to transpose numbers. Just ask Rachel Reeves. You know, she thought she was going to have a £22 billion black hole. Now she's turned into a £50 billion black hole. Absolutely amazing. Like a magician, is she not? We've also got a new person to put into the spotlight of the worst government of all time. Remember Tulip Sadiq, the woman who was in charge of corruption, not supposed to be corrupt, but was in charge of corruption in the ministerial department for Keir Starmer. Well, she's now been charged with corruption by the Bangladeshi government. Remember, of course, Louise Haigh, the Secretary of State for Transport. She unfortunately had to leave her position when it was discovered that she was a convicted fraudster. We've had Jonathan Reynolds apologising in the House of Commons for pretending to be a solicitor for over 10 years. Turns out he wasn't a solicitor. He was a fake solicitor. He's also never done anything in business, even though he is, of course, now the business secretary. You've also got Angela Rayner, of course, the woman with 2 homes, who wasn't ever really sure if she wanted to do away with capital gains tax. We've also got Rachel Reeves, who's not really the economist she claims to be, even though she went to the London School of Economics to study economics, as she's told us many times. You know, the list goes on and on and on. This morning we've got Rusha Nara Ali, who is the Minister for Homelessness, who's literally made some people homeless from her own house. She used to rent her place in London to a bunch of tenants for £3,300 a month. She kicked them out, and now she rents it for £4,000 a month, raising an extra £700 a month in rent. This despite the fact that Labour is making it illegal for landlords to relist a property for higher rent until 6 months after eviction. That's their new law, which is already broken before it's put in. Absolutely extraordinary, isn't it, how two-faced these two-tier people can be. Keir Starmer, meanwhile, has been accused of being a complete and utter plonker this morning because of the one-in, one-out rule, which, in fact, Cooper's been spouting on about. It's already collapsed around them. Have a listen to Matt.
This one-in, one-out scheme, can somebody inform the imbeciles in government that it's exactly the same as we have now, exactly the same numbers? All we're doing is paying to send people back to France, and then they'll send us ones that they don't want. What sort of morons come up with a deal that's exactly the same as we currently have it, and we're paying more for it? We're just going to be paying the airfares. It's just absolutely ludicrous.
It's like one of those shell games you used to get these con men doing in Trafalgar Square, isn't it? Where you're kind of shifting a few shells around and going, which one is it? And then while you're doing that, they're pickpocketing you, basically. There's a guy behind you as you're standing there watching. Unbelievable stuff. Peter Hitchens coming up in a moment. This from Robin Smething. How about the Monkeys' Daydream Believer? Cheer up, Rachel Reeves. Yeah, good. We're looking for songs for Keir Starmer after he declared that music was one of his most enjoyable things. It's in his blood. Who can say? We've got lots more to do. This is Morning Glory. Steve from Lincolnshire says this. Starmer's song, little does he know that he knows that we know he is cheating on us by the Kersal Flyers. Now that is, he said, a bit old for you to remember. I actually remember the Kersal Flyers. It was rather good. And this from somebody who doesn't give a name. I just cracked up when that little girl played Row, Row, Row Your Boat to Keir Starmer. That should be his theme tune. I know. I mean, whether that was accidental or not, it's just very, very funny, obviously. Let's talk to Peter Hitchens, though, columnist at The Mail on Sunday, and get some common sense back onto the show. Peter, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good to see you. You're writing today about Hiroshima. Obviously, yesterday was the anniversary of that dreadful day. And you asked the question, was the USA right to drop the atomic bomb on Hiroshima 80 years ago? As ever, it's one of those questions that you immediately go, well, of course. And then you go, well, I don't know. And that's kind of where we are, isn't it?
The difficulty is, I think, for a lot of us who lived through the supposed nuclear terror period of the 50s, 60s and 70s, we learnt to love the bomb because it appeared to be keeping the peace.
Yeah.
But now we still have major powers with the bomb and no peace. And, in fact, war breaking out like a horrible epidemic in both Ukraine and Iran, and who knows where next. Unprevented by it. So the argument, which used to be quite effective for me, that it had maintained a balance of terror and so kept the world safe, doesn't seem to be working anymore. And then you look back at the actual event, and at the time, the American authorities suppressed for many years the publication of pictures of what had actually happened in Hiroshima after the bomb had been dropped, because it was so awful.
Yeah.
And it is a terrible thing. And what I'm writing about is really a very interesting piece of scholarship by a Japanese-American who also is a Russian speaker, who looked into the whole business of the Japanese surrender and is pretty much sure that they didn't surrender because of either the Hiroshima or Nagasaki bombs, but because the Soviet Union joined in the war. And that would take away the last prop, really, from the argument that we should have used it. And I think it's certainly interesting that people should consider this because we have a lot of thinking to do about how the world is to be kept at peace over the next few years.
Yeah, because I was listening to somebody once, we were talking about the likelihood of Vladimir Putin using any kind of nuclear bomb, and there's talk of, you know, what they call tactical nuclear weapons, and the guy that I was talking to about it said, you know, tactical nuclear weapons sounds like something that wouldn't be a bad thing. However, the tactical nuclear weapons that Putin would use would actually be bigger than what was dropped on Hiroshima.
Well, that's true. Almost everything would be bigger than that. But there is another aspect of nuclear weapons which people don't think about enough, which is electromagnetic pulse, which doesn't involve any fireballs or any radiation sickness. It involves an explosion high in the atmosphere, which wipes out absolutely everything electronic. It would take this station off the air. It would close down your office and mine. It would make the power station cease to function, and every motor vehicle stopped working. The Russians certainly used to, and I visited many years ago now a park south of Moscow full of old steam locomotives, which they kept in case electromagnetic pulse was used against them, because steam locomotives are one of the few things which would keep transport moving. If that happened, you'd basically be reduced to steam engines and bicycles. And it would be a serious setback for any civilization against which it was used. It's not impossible to use nuclear weapons in this way. And if it did, it would be very, very serious indeed. People should not be relaxed about it. When the Russians start using these threats, it might be wise to consider the possibility that something of this kind might happen if it goes on. There is a great urgency, it seems to me, in finding a way out of the Ukraine war, for a start.
Yes, I mean, certainly.
It doesn't involve expanding it, and so many people seem to want to either keep it going forever or expanding it or doing things that will expand it. And I don't quite know who that's going to benefit, but it certainly would put this country in a certain amount of danger.
Well, it would, I think, and that's why, hopefully, they'll find some way to bring it to an end relatively soon.
One really does hope, and so many young men have been killed and maimed, and awful things happen in Ukrainian cities night after night, in civilians dying, and the hateful business both in Gaza and Ukraine of civilians being killed in warfare, effectively deliberately, because the people who launched the missiles and dropped the bombs know perfectly well that civilians will die, even if they're not directly targeting them. It's a horrible form of warfare, and some way must be found of stopping it, I think.
I think so. Let's talk about the front page of the Daily Mail today. HMRC staff hold classes on guilt of being British. I mean, this is probably one example of many that you could find if you went, you know, sort of poking around inside the dark recesses of the civil service. But it's a very kind of good indication of what's gone wrong with the state in this country, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? And the caricature level, they were actually being propagandized from home as well. They didn't have to come into the office. They could link up on Zoom and be told how terrible Britain was. I have to say, when I eventually got through to HMRC on the phone, which I've become quite practiced at doing, you also listen to a lot of really terrible music. The people you get through to are often rather nice. I have no complaints about them when you get through to them, but it is very difficult to do.
Yes.
It's obviously an organisation in crisis. But this business of telling people how awful Britain is has a very, very long pedigree. And when I wrote my book, The Abolition of Britain, back in 1999, I found there'd been a sort of movement among history teachers to try and deconstruct the old-fashioned patriotic history which we used to be taught and turn it into something else. It's a key part of the Cultural Revolution to persuade people that this country has a wicked past and should be guilty all the time. And it performs a similar function to the education in Marxism and Leninism that communist countries used to impose on everybody. And this wasn't just at school. Wherever you were at work, you would have to attend these lectures and indeed pass examinations. In fact, Angela Merkel, who became Chancellor of the whole of Germany, when she was an East German actual professional scientist, she had to attend these lectures and was caught reading something else while doing so and got into quite serious trouble. It is a feature of dogmatic societies that people are constantly badgered with lies about politics to try and get them to fall into line. And even if you don't believe them, even if you in some cases know them not to be true, it's dangerous to resist, you get marked down. And that's half the purpose of propaganda, to tell people how powerless they are against the new regime. But we have the thing that people need increasingly to grasp, we have had a revolution in this country. New people are in power. But the fact that they don't send anyone to gulags or shoot them doesn't mean that they aren't very ruthless about enforcing their power and their ideas. And this is one of the ways in which they do it.
Right. Well, whenever you see statistics on what's actually going on in this country, you do find that you're absolutely right, that there's so much that's being withheld from us. I mean, I found out because of the Epping protest and over in Epping Forest at the Bell Hotel, that it turns out the Essex police are arresting somebody, I think it's on statistics, only 1.4 a day for some kind of hate crime. You know, as opposed to actually... And this morning we learned in a Telegraph that at least 200 people living in asylum seeker hotels have been charged with criminal offences this year without police revealing their immigration status. You know, and you suddenly, the more you look into this stuff, the more you realise that the state is keeping things from us at quite a high level.
Well, yes, and also the police have been another key part of this revolution. The police used to enforce the very commonly held ideas that most of us still have. That it is wrong to steal and wrong to kill and wrong to attack people and hurt them without provocation, and that was what they did. And they tried to prevent these things from happening. And then, if they did happen, they then pursued the people responsible and got them prosecuted. That's not their function now. Now they believe they're some kind of paramilitary social workers trying to enforce the beliefs of left-wing people who actually still maintain that crime and disorder are caused by bad conditions and child abuse and things of that kind, not by human wickedness. And at the same time, they've taken on the job of enforcing this new ideology, the whole idea that particularly on masses of mass immigration or sexual politics or anything else, there are certain things which can no longer be said, and they are becoming a political militia. And it took me years to begin to persuade people that this thing had happened, because the police had still a reputation built up over the whole of the 20th century, really, of being the friends of the public. And they looked roughly the same. And people would say, oh, come on, you're just being unfair. There are lots of decent police officers. I said, well, there may be lots of decent police officers, but I don't know what it is they're doing or where you can find them, because the ones I'm always reading about or encountering are not like that at all. It's a wholly different organization. And if you were to try to reverse this revolution, one of the key things you would do would be to build a new police force on the old principles which it used to operate on. And when that was ready, you would disband this lot as quickly as you could, because they're a menace. They're simultaneously pathetic in the face of crime and sinister.
That's true. Let's finish with Lucy Letby, the documentary that you wrote about and that you've certainly seen several times. Came out at the beginning of this week. A lot of people saw it and sort of agreed, at the very least, with the idea that there should be a retrial.
I think the dial is beginning to swing a bit. People are beginning to realise on a large scale, when a major terrestrial channel does a programme of that kind, and it was a superb programme, I have to say, but very, very responsibly and thoughtfully put together, interviewing some very powerful witnesses. And I recommend anybody who hasn't seen it, you can watch it on ITVX without any difficulty. I noticed the other day that the programme Loose Women had come out, largely the panel had come out largely in favour of reopening the case as well, which is another big sign, I think, of the dial swing. People are beginning to realise that something has gone seriously wrong. That you don't need to believe that Lucy Letby is innocent. I don't know whether she's innocent or guilty. How could I know? All you need to believe is that the trial was unsatisfactory and she wasn't satisfactorily convicted, and it really ought to be looked at again. And if at the end of it turns out that solid evidence is produced that she is guilty, well then that's resolved. But at the moment, there's too much doubt to keep her in prison on what is effectively a slow motion death sentence. So here she is, a very important age in her life, being confined and told that she will never leave prison. Now, if she's guilty, well, so what? Why should anyone worry about that? But if she's not guilty, that is such a terrible thing that any civilized society must surely at least examine the danger that this is so, and what harm can be done. I've always said this to those who say to me, well, I think she's guilty. I think you may be right. I have to constantly be aware that people who disagree with me may be right. But if you are right, let's have it proved beyond reasonable doubt, rather than have it in the state of doubt it's in at the moment. That's all we're asking those of us who campaign in this matter.
Yes.
To have it sorted out so that we know one way or another whether this conviction stands.
Well, we'll see whether or not the court system agrees, because up to now they've been pretty,
There's some hope that something like the Criminal Cases Review Commission is looking at it. They may recommend an appeal, but even then, of course, it's as Mark MacDonald, Lucy Letby's barrister, says, it's possible they may just stick to procedure and say, well, it may well be that there is evidence that she isn't guilty, or not enough evidence that she is guilty, but because this could have been raised at her original trial, she stays in jail. Well, that, to me, makes a nonsense of our justice system. If it keeps someone in jail when there's so much evidence that she's not there beyond reasonable doubt, then that's just wrong, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Absolutely right. Peter, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Peter Hitchens, columnist at the Mail on Sunday, piece in the paper today about Hiroshima and whether it was morally right to have dropped that bomb, which is always a fascinating conversation, a fascinating argument. Let's get a voice note from Nige.
Morning, Mike. Great show. Favourite song for Keir would be I'll Be Watching You by the Police. His favourite people.
Yeah, that's very good. I'll be watching you by the police. Brian in Worthing says, morning, Mike. Slightly hungover this morning. They've finally driven me to drink. Anyway, what I want to say is, how could this figure of £5 million a day come about? It's been that amount for months, and every day more and more of these illegals arrive on our shores. I'm no mathematician, but that figure must be made up. God only knows what the truth is. They are too scared to tell us, so we'll just tell the plebs it's £5 million, and that'll do. Something's not right. Once again, we are being lied to. Surprise, surprise. Well, coming up, we're going to talk about the Royals. Robert Jobson's here, who is, of course, a columnist in many, many different places. He's an author. He has been Royal Editor of all manner of different organisations as well. He's going to talk to us about Harry and maybe a bit about Andrew as well. There's a talk.
This is a guy who spent all of his time voting against measures that were going to toughen up our immigration system. This is a guy who was campaigning against the deportation of foreign criminals. And surprise, surprise, he's in charge of this country. He's in charge of our immigration system. He set up a scheme that's going to remove 1 in 17 migrants. It's basically a really crap raffle, isn't it? 17 if you come across. One of you might be going back. But of the one that might be going back, it sounds like France might be able to cherry pick which one might go back.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 24 minutes past 8. I'm Mike Graham. How about this from Keir Starmer's songbook? Bob the Builder's Can We Fix It, says Peter in Crowthorne. Let's get a voice note from Matt.
Summer crossings happen so fast. Irregular migrants, numbers so vast. Fighting age men came out of the sea. Deliveroo job, that was the key. Summer crossings drifting our way. Oh, those irregular boats. So walla, 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 ooh. Tell me more, did you get very far? Tell me more, will they give you a car?
Very good, Matt. Well played. Put a lot of work into that. Well done. Thank you very much indeed. We've got so many good songs coming in. Really appreciate it. Keep them coming. 0834449911000. Let's talk to Robert Jobson now. He's got a piece in the Sun today all about what is going on with Prince Harry, because he's now basically burned yet another bridge. He's bailed out yet again, according to Robert. Once a passion project, now just another scorched bridge. Sentebale, the charity that he was accused of bullying and all the rest of it in. Robert, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. I'm not going to sing, but I think my song would be Sweet Little Lies by Fleetwood Mac.
Little Lies by Fleetwood Mac. Very good. Or somebody much bigger lies as well. Amazing what Harry can find trouble in, isn't it? I mean, it's almost as though it follows him around.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really sad story, this. I mean, I was around at the beginning of this Sentebale when he was forming it as a young guy, right. and it meant an awful lot to him. He was when he went out there to Lesotho, he came up with this idea. It was a good idea. The kids seemed to love him when he had great empathy with him. And he started to build this important charity that's touched, 100,000 lives, if not more, in Lesotho and Botswana. And it's all gone, pear-shaped, basically, because of egos, it seems to me. The appointment of the chair of the trustees, obviously they didn't get on. Yeah. And it's all led with a bit of a crash. But instead of staying there and finding it out behind closed doors, which would have been the best way to deal with it, I think, no organisation goes without any friction. And there needs to be meetings to sort these out. Again, he just flounced off. It's crazy because a lot of that, this was supposed to be the legacy organisation for his mother, Sentebale, Forget Me Not. Well, as I said in the piece in the Sun today, that's exactly what he seems to have done.
Well, exactly right. But also he gives the impression now, doesn't he, of somebody who just gives up. He'll try for a while, like he did with the various lawsuits in the High Court, and then eventually he just goes, "Oh well, I'm not going to do it anymore." It's like a sort of childlike attitude to everything. He sort of flounces off when he doesn't like the way it's going.
Well, there's a book out, isn't there, at the moment, Andrew Loney's entitled. Well, that's exactly could apply to that word to Harry. Yeah. Someone who's got a lot of money in the bank. He's been left millions by his mother. He's got other millions from other various sources. And, he just seems to be playing at it. When he was doing this before he met Meghan, actually, he put a lot of effort into it. And I think he really did care about it. It seems ever since he's gone to Montecito, ever since he flounced out again out of the royal family, and then started throwing bricks back at his own family, it seems that a lot of these things that he's been involved with have gone wrong. Let's just hope the one other success he has had, which was Invictus, doesn't go the same way, because ultimately it's not about you, it's about the people you're supposed to be helping. And
right.
A lot of these kids now are not, we don't know where the charity's going to go, but a lot of these kids were relying on this charity.
Exactly right. And so what happens to them now? Is it just no longer a going concern?
Well, the Charity Commission that was brought in to try and resolve a lot of this stuff actually found that there were a lot of problems, but nothing criminal.
Yeah.
And so as it stands, the woman that was running it, the chair of the trustees who he fell out with, this lawyer, as effectively is going to carry on. So the charity will carry on. It just won't have anything to do with Harry.
Yeah. And I mean, do you see the hand of Meghan in any of this? Because, this was meant to be, as you said, his mother's legacy. It was meant to be the one thing that he really cared about. And you get the impression, do you not, sometimes, that she's kind of poking him in one direction and saying, don't worry about that. That's not important to you anymore.
I think that she's pretty focused on what she's doing at the moment. I don't know if that is the case. I mean, we always seem to blame, I don't know why, but we always seem to blame Meghan for Harry's failings.
Yeah.
And actually, it does coincide with the fact that he left the royal family and moved across to Montecito. And I think that the current trustee chairman thought that this was become a bit of a vanity project. There was some suggestion that she'd fallen out with the chair of the trustees, and there was a personality clash there. But I think this is more to do with Harry's lack of conviction.
Yeah.
He put the work in all that time, and it hasn't really delivered. Do you look at other things like the Duke of Edinburgh's award schemes that's now been led by Prince Edward? That's something that lasted. The Prince Philip built that over 60 years. The Prince's Trust, now the King's Trust, something that's now become a part of the fabric of British society and has helped millions of kids. You can't just give up at the first hurdle, the first ego clash, and throw all your toys out the pram, because other people are impacted by charity, and that's something that Harry should realise, I think.
That is the problem, isn't it, though? He does have this kind of, as you say, this pattern of behaviour. And whatever he gets involved in just doesn't seem to last. But they're both a bit like that, aren't they? I mean, they launch these projects, and the project, I did the podcast, when they did a couple of podcasts and they didn't really do any more, then they do a series with Netflix and they're supposed to do loads more and they really only do one other one. The polo thing didn't go that well, so they're not really doing anything else. She launches a company and then gets the name wrong, has to change the name. And it's all a bit chaotic, isn't it?
I think chaos, it's chaotic from the start. Everyone blames their advisors, but you can only advise so much. The reality here is that these two people who I don't really know what they do. She sprinkles a few things on, bits of flour and a bit of jam and says it's original. The reality here is it lacks any depth, but Centre Barley did have depth. It did have a purpose. It had a mission. It was doing a lot of good. I just think it's a shame, because it's not really about Harry. Once you've grown it to a certain level, the charity is about the people it serves. He seems to have forgotten them by walking out on them. He says he's going to do other things in Southern Africa and he's going to help other people. You just get the feeling that that's part of his life he's dealt with, just move on. And that's a terrible shame, because I think, it really is important to help these kids. They're 1 minute they're in poverty, they've got HIV. It's not about him, it's about them.
Right. Seriously. What did you make, because I haven't really spoken to you since the pictures came out, what did you make of that Tobin Andre meeting? He's obviously the King's communications specialist, supposedly meeting up with Harry and Meghan's sort of people.
Well, it looked like a blatant leak by the Harry's people to me. I mean, that's what it looked like. I don't know if it was, but it looked like that. And that Tobin, who must have informed the King of what he was doing. If he didn't, it'd be a bit of a surprise. Was called out. I mean, look, at the end of the day, the only people benefiting from that were more publicity for Harry and Meghan, saying that there's some form of reconciliation. My information is that isn't the case. The King and William and really in the same position they have been for some time. There's a total lack of trust with Harry. I suppose if you look at what Harry said about his father's illness when he was interviewed for the BBC after losing that case on security at the High Court, he was sort of talking about his father's mortality. Well, I'm sure he is a bit concerned going forward, because if his brother is the King, I can't imagine very much money is going to be coming his way.
Yeah, indeed. And you mentioned that book that's out currently being serialised by the Mail. I know we don't like to talk about other people's books, but
No, I don't. No,
it's quite a revelatory tome, isn't it? I mean, it's making Prince Andrew look even worse than we thought he was.
Well, I've got to review the book for The Standard, actually, and I've read it. Andrew's a great writer, Andrew Loney. He's written some great books. I think it is slightly different, as I was saying in the piece, when you're dealing with live people. And I'm always slightly sceptical when writers come to, they've been working on something for 4 years and have interviewed, got 400 contacts, whatever. I mean, I've been doing this 35 years. I've probably got the contacts are only good, probably 5 in the whole period of time. So, but I think it's a good book. It's thorough. I mean, some of the things in it I don't really recognise. I've met and interviewed Andrew. I know Sarah Ferguson quite well. I don't really recognise all of the points. But then again, there are others that are fascinating. It's a great dive into who this guy is and how his life and hers, actually, they're both intertwined, collapsed over a period of time. Yeah, interesting book, and it's certainly grabbed the headlines. And good luck on sales.
Absolutely. You got anything coming out soon?
Yeah, I've been working on a book called The Windsor Legacy, which is perhaps a bit more critical book, coming out after the Catherine Princess Wales book. It comes out in November. It's going to look at the 100 years of. It's called the Windsor Legacy, a century of royal scandal, secrets and survival, and it basically goes through all of the scandals during that last 100 years, which is 100 years, of course, since the Queen's birth next year. And obviously the latter half of the book will be focused on some of the comings and goings that have been going on lately. We've not been shy of a few scandals lately.
Absolutely right. Great to see you, Robert. Thank you very much indeed. Robert Jobson, royal author, Peace and Sun today, about the whole business of Sentibale and Harry and how he keeps walking away from things, and it's not really something you can mess around with anymore. When he's talking about sick children in Africa, you would think he might have a bit more of a conscience about that, but I guess not. Let's now look at what the Sun Letters page has got in store.
Letters from the Sun, the page where you tell Britain what to think. For more, visit thesun.co.uk.
And the star of the show today is very much Rachel Reeves. According to Ian in Leicester, our Chancellor appears to be using an abacus to work out her sums, as she has reportedly turned a £20 billion black hole left by the Tories into £50 billion. Folk with business sense like that have told her and her policies are nonsense, but they are ignored. She's heading for a cliff edge. And Pete in Essex says, at last, success for the Chancellor, who has managed to turn a so-called £20 billion black hole into a £50 billion one. Is that the economic growth she promised? That's very good. And a rather nice touch, actually, at the top of the page from Kath in Chester, who says, listening to Mike Graham on Talk this morning, I was in tears as he played James Whale's goodbye speech from his hospice bed. He will be sorely missed by all his radio friends. James was more than just a colleague to them. R.I.P. James. And, of course, we would echo that sentiment. Kath, thank you very much indeed for listening to that. We've got loads more songs for Keir Starmer coming through. We're going to be talking to many, many more of you on the phones as well. You can put your calls in 0344 499 1000. Coming up next, though, we've got a Talk exclusive about a prison lockdown that happened. Why? Because one of the prison officers took the keys home with him. For heaven's sake, this is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 8:39. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. Julie Hartley-Brewer on from 10. Mate, great show as always, says Scott. A quick question. Where were yesterday's illegal migrants detained, says Scott in Birmingham? Well, they weren't, were they? And morning songs for Keir, says Graham in Sunderland. The Rolling Stones, Gimme Shelter. And as for Reeves, the same band, 19th Nervous Breakdown. Yeah, Steve from Leon C. Keir Starling's favourite song, Labour Came In Like a Wrecking Ball by Miley Cyrus. Yeah, one for the teenagers there. So let's talk to Kay and Carrie, though, because it's an amazing story. Talk exclusive this morning about Brixton Prison, HMP Brixton, as it's known. It was forced to throw a 2-week lockdown into the mix, right? Because apparently a guard took a set of keys home and didn't return them for 6 days. All the inmates at the Category C prison down in South London were confined to their cells as panicked officers scrambled to change the locks on every door following the major breach. Kind of hard to believe this one. Kagan, a very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
I mean, I guess for those of us who are not that familiar with the way a prison works, presumably there's not just one set of keys, but the worry here was that if the keys had fallen into the wrong hands, presumably, somebody could have just come in and walked through into the door and let everybody out.
Yeah, you're right. So everybody has access to keys, different keys, depending on what part of the prison they're in. But yeah, the problem there is, Mike, that they have left the prison and goodness knows what's happened to them. They could have been copied, they could have been given to somebody, and that would have been a catastrophe because anybody could have then got, into the prison, anybody could have had a copy, and we could have opened cell doors, prisoners could have been released. It would have been devastating.
Right. And what's normally the procedure then? I mean, presumably it should be something that we shouldn't be able to see happening. I mean, we're looking at footage there of Brixton Prison because I think we had a camera down there on that famous day back end of last year when all the prisoners were getting released by Keir Starmer's new, prisons policy. Let's let them all out. So presumably at some point or other, if you've got a set of keys, you have to hang them up or you have to give them to the night watchman or whatever. What do you actually do?
Absolutely, Mike. So there is a protocol in place for getting your keys and handing them back when your shift is over. And, it's very strategic. And there are also ways for you to be alerted if the keys have been taken past specific parts of a prison. So something has gone very wrong here. It's very confusing as to how this person has actually been able to get the keys out of the establishment.
Yeah, right. I mean, we've spoken before, and I've certainly had conversations with other people before as well about how there's been a bit of a concern about an influx of what you might call connected prison guards, people who have applied for prison guard jobs who actually might be more on the wrong side of the law than on the right side of the law, if you know what I mean. Is there any suggestion that this character might have been doing this for a bad reason rather than just absent-mindedly taking the keys by mistake?
We don't know. There's no suggestion as to the motive behind it. Taking keys home is the biggest no-no in the prison space. It's the number one thing that no officer ever wants to do.
Yeah.
The fact that it took so long to hand them back, was it fear? Because a lot of things could have happened. So as you say, the prison goes into lockdown. It can cost between hundreds of thousands to millions of pounds to change the lock. It's a long process. What will their colleagues make of it? And they could also be disciplined for doing it as well. So there's a lot at stake for doing this.
And I mean, I'm not being funny, but presumably a set of prison keys. I mean, I know we've probably got that image of the big sort of huge pile of keys on a great big, a great big piece of chain link or something like that. I mean, but it's presumably the bunch of keys for a prison is quite big, isn't it?
Yeah, you'd think so, but I mean, it depends whether it was an officer in the wings. They all have different kind of keys, so I'm not sure how big they would have been, but absolutely, they're all stored securely. So it is a wonder how they've been able to go missing and it's not been spotted.
Right, and so God knows how much it would cost to replace the locks on every single door in a prison. But I mean, there's quite a lot of them, I imagine.
Yeah, well, in the past, there was a prison where one key went missing and it opened 400 spaces in a prison, so 400 locks had to be changed. And we've also had ones before where it has cost into the millions, sometimes hundreds of thousands. We don't know how much this is going to cost, but it's money that we don't have because they apparently don't have money to improve dilapidated conditions in prison, so they don't have this kind of money to be spending, whatever it costs.
Right. I mean, the prison themselves have said that the prison was not intensely locked down, but we understand that inmates' movements and their activities were restricted between mid to late July. So, I mean, it sounds like a lockdown if they don't want to call it that.
Yeah, and it would have been a big problem for staff as well, because it's not a quick job to change locks. So specific areas might not have been as secure as they should have been. So that's a lot of staff manpower to ensure that the security is kept within the prison. So at a time when they're already under-resourced and under pressure, it would have been a lot for staff to deal with.
Yeah, it really is a terrible, terrible blunder. And I mean, in terms of the way prisons deal with this kind of thing, will this individual, do you think, be disciplined? Will we ever find out who it was? Will they be fired? What?
I'm not sure if we'll ever find out who it is, but absolutely, the minute something like this happens, there's an investigation to find out what's gone wrong, what's happened. I don't know what the outcome would be, but it doesn't look good that it's taken them 6 days. I've spoken to officers before about situations like this and what they would do if this happened, and they've said the minute that you realise that you don't have the keys, you turn around and you're back there. The fact that they've taken 6 days, they've put themselves in a really difficult
I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, I walked out. I was about to walk out the building here yesterday with a little earpiece in my ear, and I suddenly realised it was in there. And I went back and I didn't go home and think, I'll hang on to it for 6 days, and I'll come back and bring it back. You know, I thought I'd bring it back before I got out the building, but there we are. Fantastic stuff. Kagan, thank you very much indeed for talking to us. Your podcast, of course, is called Evolving Prisons. Hard to believe, isn't it? My instinct on this is I slightly smell a bit of a rat here, that somebody took the keys knowing that they were taking the keys. I mean, I can't imagine how big my bunch of keys is quite big, right? And I don't run a prison, okay? I've just got a flat. But there's quite a few keys on there. If you're running a prison, I mean, how big is a set of keys? And you go, oh, I didn't know I took them. Well, what, were they in a bag, you know, in a pocket? I mean, how can you not know that you've taken them? That's what I find slightly weird. Here's one to Darren in South Wales says this: Mike, if Putin and Trump do meet, they have both ruled out London. It's just too dangerous for them. It's true, actually. It was the Mexican government, I think, the other day that was warning that if he comes to London, be very careful. And we saw, actually, we haven't put the picture up today, but I know that, I think Peter Cardman was talking about this yesterday. There's now a sort of a ribbon, if you like, painted onto the pavement in Oxford Street, telling you to beware of your actual phone being stolen. And it says something like "mind the grab," which is a play on words from "mind the gap." Which was, of course, what they tell you on the underground, so you don't fall down in between the train and platform. But mind the grab. So they've actually now got a commercial company putting a sign out on the streets, effectively telling you, oh, and there it is now. Very good. See how they're terrific people here. Far too good for me. Mind the grab. Step back from the curb, because it's a phone snatching hotspot. Well, you might as well put that on every street in London, because it's all a phone. The whole of London is a phone snatching hotspot. Let's go back to the voice notes, though, because you've sent in some wonderful ones today. We thought this would go well. These are Starmer songs. Have a listen.
Be-do, I don't want to be like you.
Welcome to the hotels down in Dover.
Simply read, money's too tight to mention.
I'm a muppet, and I don't know what I'm doing.
We've got 100 migrants in a boat. Gotta show them dignity.
We're going down, 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 down.
Come fly with me, let's fly away.
You take a migrant in, you send one out, one in, one out.
Shake it all about, absolutely. 8:47, this is Talk.
Some breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
That's something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a talk exclusive we've been looking at.
I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, does these people who lead us actually hate Britain?
Yeah.
Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. 10 minutes to 9. I'm Mike Graham. This one from Daz. This is a Starmer song. Every breath you take will be taxing you. Very good. Wake me up before you go, says Fee in Berkshire. And here from Jane. Morning, Mike. Many people are still waiting for pictures of Starmer's meeting with President Trump last week. Yeah, remember that? He went all the way to Scotland and then didn't publish any of the pictures of him with Donald Trump at Turnberry or in Aberdeen or a state dinner, not a state dinner, but a private dinner that was taking place. Unbelievable stuff. It's almost as if he didn't want anyone to remember how much of an idiot he'd been made to look and humiliated. Let's talk to Ash Regan, MSP for Edinburgh Eastern at the Alipur party up there. Ash, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Don't know if you were invited to the Trump extravaganza last week, were you?
I wasn't, no.
Oh, well, there you go. Well, I bet if you had, though, you might have put a couple of pictures out, which Keir Starmer completely forgot to do. I can't imagine why. He puts pictures out of him meeting everybody else.
Yeah, I think I do take part in some political meetings where it's more that you're trying to lay the groundwork for possible changes in legislation and things like that. And I never put those photos on social media.
No.
But type of thing, it's a formal ceremonial occasion. I think you probably would be okay to do that.
Well, he does it all the time. But anyway, we can talk about him until the cows come home. Let's talk about prisons instead, because funnily enough, we were just talking about a prison story just before this, a rather bizarre one, where a Brixton jailer apparently went home with the keys and they had to lock down the prison for 2 weeks. But you want to talk about this idea of trans women and women in prison, because it's been an issue this week, hasn't it, with Reform's new sort of spokesperson for prisons, Vanessa Frake. We had her on the other day. She came out and said that she thought trans women should be placed in prisons on a case-by-case basis, which sort of confused a lot of people and upset a lot of Reform voters.
Yes, it's very much a case of another week. Another political party seems to get very confused about the fact that they really do need to be upholding women's rights. So quite a new appointment, I believe, a new advisor for Reform. And as I understand it, this statement was made. Nigel, I think, was sitting there and appeared to agree with it, made a few comments around it. So I suppose my initial thoughts on that would be that the public probably thought Reform was at least one of the political parties that was taking kind of a common sense approach to this, that they understood the issues, they knew they needed to protect women and they knew they needed to uphold the law. It seems as if that's not really the case now. If you really did understand the law in this area, you had empathy for, in this case, it's for female prisoners, and you were understood that you needed to uphold the law, because obviously we've had this Supreme Court judgment quite recently, which has put, this thing is entirely beyond clarity, is there for everybody to see. I'm surprised that Nigel in that moment didn't recognise that.
Yeah. I mean, I sort of have some sympathy for him, because when I spoke to Vanessa Frake, I'd seen her explaining it on another channel previous to the day that I spoke to her. And she basically said that, it's a very small number for a start, one, and two, obviously it depends on the situation. If some woman or some man who is a trans woman has just decided that he's a woman and has decided that, he wants to be in a women's prison because he thinks he's a woman, then obviously she said that would probably not be somebody you'd put in a women's prison. But if it was somebody who had perhaps lived as a woman, even though was a biological man for 25, 30 years, you wouldn't want to put them in the male prison. That was kind of her logic, it seemed to me.
Well, the law's the law. So the law is saying that where there are single-sex spaces, that needs to be applied. So that would be single-sex. So it doesn't matter, how you dress or how you present or how you see yourself, what kind of clothes you wear, based on biology. So in that case, it would be, only women in the women's prison estate. And, if we're talking about risk assessments and we're talking about this idea of case-by-case basis, in Scotland, using that type of approach, we ended up with a double rapist in the women's estate. So that just shows...
Which is obviously completely mad. I've got a little clip, I think, of Sarah Pochin, the Runcorn MP from Reform. Let's see what she had to say.
I would like to clarify Reform UK's policy on transgender prisoners serving time in a female prison. I can assure all of you that under a Reform government, no biological male prisoner will ever serve time in a female prison. The safety of women will always be a priority for Reform.
So I guess they're going against what Vanessa Frake said, and to be fair, so did Nigel Farage in the end, and so did Richard Tice. I think they all put out statements, but there is this kind of grey area, because what Vanessa said to me was if the person, for example, the trans woman had some kind of surgery to become more woman-like, whatever it is, you couldn't put them in. She said, well, you couldn't put them in the male prison.
Well, no, that's complete nonsense. There is a policy in the male prison for vulnerable men, because there are other male prisoners that have vulnerabilities about them, which means that you wouldn't put them in the general population. Right. So they would be housed there. What we can't do is take vulnerable men and then decide that actually we're going to put them in the women's prison estate. That creates vulnerabilities for the female prisoners that are in. So yes, Reform appear to be on full damage limitation mode right now.
Yes.
To clarify, or should we say re-clarify their position on this issue. I think the public want clarity.
Yeah.
I
must say, when I saw what Vanessa Frake had said, I thought, oh, crikey, she's not going to be doing that job for long. But she still seems to be doing it. So I don't know whether she's going to change her view, or whether they're going to do one of those, oh, we're a party that has different views. But they certainly seem to have clarified that their policy is that no trans woman will ever be in a women's prison.
Yes, we still in Scotland have male prisoners in the women's prison estate. It's very difficult now to get the figures because the government made the decision, I think it was last year, that for political reasons they would stop publishing that information. So it's difficult, but we think somewhere in the region of between 3 and 5. Now, these prisoners are in for very serious offences, including murder. And so we are continuing our campaign up here to try to put pressure on the government and the Scottish Prison Service in order for them to comply with the law and move these prisoners back out into where they should be, which is in the male estate.
Because we also know, statistically speaking, that an awful lot of trans women prisoners are in prison for sexual offences, don't we?
They are a disproportionate number, which might lead you to think that some people convert to saying they have a trans identity after they're convicted for sex. But yes, going back to the surgery point, because I think sometimes the public have this impression that, when you talk about somebody who's transgender, it means that they've had extensive surgeries and they've been on hormones and so on. The vast, vast majority of these trans prisoners will not have had any surgery, nor do they intend to.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it should be, as you say, pretty straightforward, but appreciate your time. Thank you very much indeed. Ash Regan, MSP for Edinburgh Eastern from the Alpha Party. Reform getting their knickers in a bit of a twist there, I think, this week, but they say that they've now sorted that out. A bit of breaking news for you, by the way. According to the Home Office, the first migrants have been detained under the terms of the UK-France migrant returns deal for the first time. According to an update from the Home Office, those who arrive in the UK on a small boat will be held in removal centres pending return. I'm not sure where these removal centres are. In exchange, migrants in France can apply to come to the UK on a one-to-one exchange basis, subject to strict criteria and security checks being met. The scheme will be reviewed to tackle any issues as the scale and speed of returns increases. Starmer has just tweeted as well, we have detained the first illegal migrants under our new deal before returning them to France. No gimmicks, just results. If you break the law to enter this country, you will face being sent back. When I say I will stop at nothing to secure our borders, I mean it. Oh, really? Well, how many people have been detained? And when are they going back? And when are they making the first call to the human rights lawyers to see if they can stay? We shall see. Lots more to come. Chris Philp coming up in the next hour. William Clouston as well from the SDP. And we'll talk about the tax burden rising on Middle England. Now they want to put your council taxes up again. Absolutely unbelievable stuff. This is Talk. We'll be back after the news.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 9. It is Thursday, the 7th of August, ladies and gentlemen, and we are here until 10 o'clock. Don't forget, every single weekday morning from 6 to 10. Then there's a podcast that comes out around about 10:15, 10:30. We've just had a bit of breaking news just before we left the last hour. According to the Home Office, they have detained some migrants. It doesn't say quite where they've been detained. It doesn't say quite how many they have detained. But apparently, according to Keir Starmer, we have detained the first illegal migrants under our new deal before returning them to France. No gimmicks, just results, he says. If you break the law to enter this country, you will face being sent back. When I say I will stop at nothing to secure our borders, I mean it. Why does he have to add that bit in at the end? I mean, it doesn't really make any difference to what has actually happened. And what is not clear, of course, is that nobody knows how many migrants have been detained, where they have been detained, whether or not they're migrants who came yesterday on many of the small boats that arrived in what's being called dinghy rush hour, which is in the Daily Mail this morning, because around about 7 o'clock is when it all starts ramping up over on the coast off Calais. And the migrants make their way across. Chris Philp is going to join us in this hour. He was out on the channel yesterday, keeping an eye on things, and he saw that basically nothing had changed. There were still loads and loads of boats coming over, and they were being helped by Border Force into the UK. Now, what we don't know, according from the Home Office's tweet that I've got here. They say this is what happens next. Those who arrive in the UK on the small boat will be held in removal centres pending return. Now, we were asking the question yesterday, where are these removal centres? Are they in parts of the southeast of England? Are they near Dover? Are they anywhere near? 48,678. You can see that number on the migrant tracker is the number that came in. I would guarantee you that there's probably no more than about 8 that have been detained. So that means 48,670 still to go. It also says, in exchange, migrants in France can apply to come to the UK on a one-to-one exchange basis, subject to strict criteria and security checks. Well, that may well be. William Clouston's here. We're going to talk to him about all of this as well. The scheme will be reviewed to tackle any issues as the scale and speed of returns increases. What we found out yesterday was that anybody who is detained can ask for legal representation, so they could get a human rights lawyer to say that they need to be able to stay here because they can't be sent back. The French can also refuse to accept anybody back because they can say, we don't want them, in which case we're stuck with them. So we'll get to the bottom of all of this. Meanwhile, you've got HMRC staff holding classes on the guilt of being British. That's on the front of the Mail. You've got the BBC scandal mongers on the front of the Sun. Not only have they started airing the new MasterChef show, but a female star has showed a terribly vile picture of somebody's anatomy to somebody else at the BBC, and she burst into tears. And meanwhile, Charlie State, the breakfast presenter, is being investigated for bullying. It's not like that here at Talk. Nothing like that at all. 9:05, this is Morning Glory. Also, taxes apparently going up again. Keir Starmer yesterday couldn't say that they weren't going to, and possibly council tax going to go up if you live in a reasonably wealthy part of the country. William Clouston's here from the STP. Very good morning to you, William.
Hi, Mike.
We've got the Starmer tweet in full now. I think we're going to stick it up on the screen. Here's what he actually says. We have detained the first illegal migrants under our new deal before returning them to France. No gimmicks, just results. If you break the law to enter this country, you will face being sent back. When I say I will stop at nothing to secure our borders, I mean it. You can see it up there on the screen. I think we need to explain to Keir Starmer, who's meant to be quite an intelligent man, who's worked in the law for many years, that this is not a result. He says no gimmicks, just results. It's not a result until you've sent them back, is it?
No, and the thing
detaining them isn't a result.
No, and it won't work anyway. This is just another publicity stunt by one of the duopoly parties. The Tories did this with Rwanda. We've seen it all before. A result, Mike, would be the flow stopping altogether.
Yes.
And you can only do that if you detain every single person that comes. So a percentage, a small percentage. Right. I mean, they've said a number. You don't know. I mean,
why won't they say the number? Presumably because it's not very high.
Well, what I worry about is that 1 is a number.
Yeah.
Right, so this is going to...
I mean, they have used the word migrants with an S.
Yes, OK.
So let's say it could be 2.
Yeah, Bill Clinton. I don't know. I don't think this will work. If he wants to be judged on results, it will stop. It won't stop, it'll continue. People in pubs and in the real world, outside SW1, regard this as a state-sponsored invasion of the country.
Well, many people have said to me over the past sort of several weeks, actually, the real smuggling gang is the government.
Is the government, yeah, because they're the biggest part.
Yeah.
They are providing the incentive and its basics, and I don't know what's wrong with these people. Most people understand this. The public understand it.
Of course they do.
And we're going to talk about tax later, and I think what we have is just a predicament. Like, if something is a problem, it's solvable. You can solve problems. But this is worse than that. It's a predicament, and the predicament is that Labour can't, and the same with the Tories, they can't do what's necessary to solve the problem because of the backbenchers and the Labour Party itself. It's not capable of doing what is required.
But I think also there's a narrative that the Downing Street sort of spin machine, if you like, is trying to give us all, which is that, Keir Starmer's being hidebound a little bit by his backbenchers. I don't think he, in his heart of hearts, wants to do it either, because in his mind, all migrants are good. In his mind, all migrants contribute to the economy,
well, yes, he's enumerate if he thinks that. Yeah. I mean, this is the other thing. I mean, I repeat it, but this particular category of migration, all the data says it, low-skilled migration is fiscally negative anyway.
Yes.
But asylum seeker migration as a category throughout Europe is massively so, not unreasonable to think that every single one will cost about £500,000 through the tours, through the cycle. This is utterly disastrous in a state that we can't even balance our books properly without borrowing massively. So no, I think that's a predicament. I agree with you. I don't think Starmer and the front bench have a different view on this particular issue. They're massively refugees welcome and sanctuary cities everywhere. That's what they think. That's what they want. So
you
they
can
don't
tell
want to
that they hate having to deal with this. This is something they tried not to deal with for as long as they possibly could. And now they've finally come up with a policy which is so ridiculous that it could never work. I mean, apart from anything else, as I've been saying for the last couple of days, aside from the fact that they haven't explained how it's going to physically work, in terms of even if, say, for example, they've detained 2 people and they've decided that they're going to send them back to France, right? Both of those people could probably hire lawyers, they've admitted this, to keep themselves here, or at least challenge the detention and then challenge the expulsion, if you want to call it that. Even if they don't do that and they are supposedly going to be sent back, there's no explanation of how they're going to be sent back. Are they going to be put on a plane? Are they going to be put on a bus? Where exactly are they going? The French could also refuse to have them back on the and we're paying basically for all of this. So we're paying for the French to take them back. We're paying for the French to send us some more. We're going to supposedly look at people and say, you're okay, you can come in. It's madness. Unless they
disapply the ECHR, particularly Article 8, on most of the claims are on that now. It could go to Article 3 if they wanted, unless they get rid of that architecture, that legal architecture. You can't have a border. No. You can't have a border. I've explained, I'll give the SDP's policy to anyone who wants it for the good of the country. Set a large detention centre up on Ascension or South Georgia. We're not troubling the French. Forget about troubling the French. Don't ask the French to solve your own problem. No. It's your problem. Right. And then detain every single unsolicited arrival, ship them to Ascension for a couple of years to cool off, and then they go back to where they're from. And I promise you that would stop the flow. And I don't believe that if you build a big detention centre, it would ever be used. No. Because I think word gets around. People think these people are idiots. They're not idiots. They're not. They're making the bargain of a century. Of course they're coming here for €5,000, getting half a million pounds in state support. And many of them are probably not paying the money up front anyway. Some of them are going into debt to do it, or they're in slavery, sort of indoctrinated into slavery, where they end up in a nail bar or a brothel or something like that. I mean, there's a chilling piece in the Mail today as well on 22 to 23. Sue Reed, another really good investigation. The death of EU free movement, basically saying that because of rising fears of jihadi threats from the migrants sweeping across Europe, 10 of the bloc's most influential neighbours have introduced emergency police ID checks at hundreds of internal borders, including Germany, France, Italy, Slovenia, Austria, Poland, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands. We meanwhile have no border check at all. No, it's insane, and we're the state that can have it because we theoretically are a self-governing nation state. That's what we voted for in 2016. And we also have a rather big barrier called the English Channel. Yeah, which we don't use. Right. No, I mean, and again, and the picture has been tried. It's established. The Australians did it, and it works. So you can do it if you want to. It always comes back. Mike, I've said on the show many times, they could do it if they want to. They don't want to, and that's the predicament that the public has now to put up with. Yeah. Because you've got a government that don't really want a border. No. And the other problem, of course, that they've created with this new system is that you can now come into this country legally where you might otherwise have tried your luck illegally, because people are going to come to France and apply online to get asylum status in Britain, which they will get if, in fact, they qualify under the criteria, which is we know people here, we've got family here, which many people will say even if they haven't. Of course, and we're fleeing some terrible situation. Yeah. So the qualification for coming in on that basis is going to encourage even more people to come. Yeah. In some years, the asylum applications as a category of people here legally is roughly equivalent to the small boats crossings on the channel. Exactly. Anyway. So it's bigger. And then overstayers and people, we don't check anything. Well, do you remember the net migration figures last year? And I remember asking a question about this, and it didn't become clear until we found out about the Afghan migrants being smuggled into the country. But there were 76,000 asylum seekers who came in by legal routes, by the way. And so I assume that included the Afghans. Because that was on top of the 50,000 odd that came in on the small boat. But in some years it could be 25,000 anyway. Yeah. On people that are here for study and then don't want to go home or whatever, and have a reason. No, the whole thing is desperately depressing, and the public, you know, now immigration as an issue is the top issue, despite the problems that we have with the economy.
Right.
It's now at 30%, it's the top, and 2 points down from that is the economy. So the public know, and on many things
and
the
also
public
the
are
two
ahead.
things are interrelated, aren't they? Because one of the reasons the economy is in such a bad way is because of all the money we waste on illegal migration and on dealing with people seeking asylum.
And we don't, and it's short-termism, again, we've spoken about this, it's short-termism every single time because it's very, very expensive. A low-skilled migrant is very expensive fiscally because you've got to educate and look after in the health needs and housing needs of their entire family. So it's very expensive to ship people in with low skills. Meanwhile, our own indigenous population is increasingly on benefits, you know, particularly the young, you know, with anxiety and so on. But think about this. Low-skilled migration is expensive anyway. You get a double whammy if you can train, if you can get someone off welfare who's here into work. You not only avoid the low-skilled, physically negative cost, you reduce your own benefits bill. So I've argued, you know, if you have to pay people in social care more, it's actually cheaper. It would be cheaper to do that, to get our own people and train our own people here instead of using this short-term fix all the time.
Absolutely right. A bit more breaking news. Apparently the Kremlin have now confirmed that Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin will meet in the coming days. We were asking the question as to where that might be. We'll find out where that might be. Bring that to you as well. We'll stay with us for a moment if I can talk about tax, because Chris Philp is going to Shadow Home. He was out in the Channel yesterday. Some people say channeling Nigel Farage, checking on what it was that was going on there, and what it was that was going on was pretty much what goes on every single day. Chris, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
You managed to survive the trip then. It looked like it was reasonably calm. It didn't look too choppy.
Well, there was a bit of wash from the aftermath of the storm, and I've got to say the Express journalist who was with me did end up spending quite a bit of time being sick over the side of the boat, so it wasn't completely calm. But as you said, despite the government's New Deal, which they claimed would act as a deterrent, people were still crossing. Within half an hour, we found 2 boats stuffed full of illegal immigrants, almost entirely young men, who weren't being deterred at all. And that's not surprising because the government's deal has only, I think, 6% of people being returned, 94% get to stay. So hardly surprising, it's not much of a deterrent.
Well, this morning they're telling us that they've detained the first illegal migrants under the New Deal. Keir Starmer says no gimmicks, just results. They haven't said how many. They say, according to the Home Office, they're being detained in some kind of holding centre, but it's not clear where that is or what that is. So what would you say? They say basically if you break the law to enter this country, you will face being sent back. But it's not clear, as I say, one, how many they've detained, and two, how quickly they'll be sent back.
Both very good questions. We don't know how many. The briefing that came out previously suggested that it would only be 50 a week who get returned, which amounts to only 6% of arrivals, meaning 94% get to stay. That's no deterrent. We've also found, looking at the details of the French agreement, it's got more holes than a piece of Swiss cheese. If somebody pretends to be under 18, they get to stay in the UK. If they make a modern slavery or even a made-up human rights claim, they end up going into a lengthy legal process that's likely to take months, if not years, to resolve. So I strongly suspect the people that have been detained today, however many that is, will end up going into a lengthy legal quagmire that could take months or years to resolve. And that is why, when I was on the water yesterday, the illegal immigrants were still coming across, and the French, by the way, were doing nothing at all to stop them. They were, in fact, ushering them and escorting them across the English Channel.
And what about this line which the Home Office has put out today saying, in exchange for these people who have been detained, migrants in France can apply to come to the UK on a one-to-one exchange basis, subject to strict criteria and security checks being met? I mean, how confident could we be about those checks?
Well, not confident at all, because the agreement with France expressly says the French government will not share any personal details at all about the illegal immigrants being, the people in France being sent here, who probably are illegal immigrants. So even if the French government know that they've been convicted of a criminal offence, if maybe they're suspected of being extremists or even terrorists, even if the French government know that, the treaty, the agreement, says the French government will not tell the UK government those facts. So we don't really know, to be honest, who is going to be getting sent into the UK at all.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of who they are and how they come here as well, Do they bring the family with them? Is there, you know, any criteria for who gets priority? You know, do women and children get priority over single men? You know, it's not very. There's a lot of detail that's not there.
That's right. We don't really know how this is going to work. I think it does include family as well, and we know that sometimes people bring over vast numbers with them. So I think the government has a lot of questions to answer. The thing that worries me the most is the fact the French government will not be sharing any personal data. So even if the French government know the individual is an extremist, a terrorist, they may have been convicted of crimes, the French government are not going to be telling us about that. We don't know who these people are beyond what they choose to tell us themselves.
Now, Angela Eagle, the Home Office Minister, was very critical of you yesterday, saying that you were just out on a boat pointing at things and that you weren't really doing anything about it. You didn't do anything about it for years. I mean, would you say to her that you tried to do things about it, but they stopped you?
Well, I think, first of all, in the last full year of the last government, 2023, illegal immigrant numbers crossing the Channel went down by 30%. And then we had the Rwanda plan that after all of those legal challenges, we had to pass a new law. That was finally ready to start in July of last year. But just a few days before it was due to start, the Labour government, Keir Starmer, cancelled it with no replacement plan except for their laughable claim they were going to smash the gangs. And as a consequence of that, so far this year, 2025, we've seen the worst ever numbers, the highest ever numbers illegally crossing the Channel. It's gone up by 50%. It's the worst ever. And that is thanks to the decisions that this Labour government, which includes Angela, have taken.
And what are you going to do next? Because Robert Jenrick started with his little videos that he was putting out there. Have you got plans to do something else out there on the big wide sea?
Well, I've been out to an asylum hotel a few weeks ago, and in fact exposing the illegal working on Deliveroo at the asylum hotel, which actually shamed the government into acting a week or two after that. I went to an encampment of tents by Romanian and Bulgarian beggars on Park Lane, and the day after I went there, that finally got cleared. I was out on the Channel yesterday. There are various other things I have in mind, so just watch my social media accounts to see what's coming next.
All right. Chris Philp, thanks very much indeed. Chris Philp, Tory MP, Shadow Home Secretary. William Clouston's still here with us. I mean, that's the new thing, isn't it, now, for MPs to go out and sort of, you know, put the old cape on and look as though you're sort of, you know, fighting for the people. You know, good luck to him. If it gets results, you know, I don't mind people doing that.
Yeah, I mean, it's an approach. The problem with the Tories, I wish they'd done some of this in the government.
Yeah. I mean, what they will say, I gave him a chance to say it, and he didn't say it, but what he could have said was that, you know, the Labour government and lawyers stopped everything that they tried to do. And I realise that doesn't admonish them at all from not being any good at it. No. But every manoeuvre they tried seemed to not work.
Well, they were badly led. I mean, they had a large majority and they didn't use it. And again, I've said before, because the values of the Tory party is too many of them are Lib Dems. Yeah. Rory Stewart.
Rory Stewart decided he is a Lib Dem now.
Lib Dem, yeah. I mean, you can't tell.
We always knew that, though.
There are about, to be fair, and I probably shouldn't say this, but there are about 10 or 12 very good Tories, as you know. But most of them aren't. Most of them really aren't. Right. So even if Johnson with an 80 seat, 70, 80%, they couldn't get it.
And they're not even fiscal Tories now, because they talk about, you know, the party of low taxes. People just fall about laughing. Yeah. You know, if it wasn't for Labour, we had the highest tax regimen ever. Yeah. Didn't we?
If as a self-governing democracy, they'd in 2018, 2019, when the tiny little trickle started, if they'd had anything about them, they'd have stopped it. Yeah. And once it starts to be a flood, you're in real trouble. Word gets round. And no, I bless them. I mean, the problem with the public, you speak to the public, they don't believe the Tories. I mean, you've had your chance.
I know. We get that all the time. Whenever I speak to any Tory MP, a lot of people say, why even bothering? Sorry. You know, what's the point? Yeah. You know. But there we are. Just finally on tax, there's word that there's going to be council tax rises coming because local councils haven't got enough money. Yeah. There's word that the income tax rises are coming, whether it's in the form of a moving of the thresholds or whether it's an increase in VAT. Nobody's quite sure. There's no question that this government have completely lost the plot economically.
They have, and we're in a serious doom loop now. Again, I've mentioned several times before, it's the worst circumstances. Did you see the June borrowing figures, the net borrowing figures for June alone? Over 20 billion. Yeah. That figure, Mike, is almost as big as the peak lockdown borrowing. So it's an emergency.
And they've borrowed around about 20 billion every single month since they've been in.
It goes. You can get a surplus in January for the tax revenues. But yeah, no. In total, the facts are this, right? So we're paying about 120 billion in interest on the gilts, and we're borrowing 140. So we're basically borrowing to pay interest. Yeah. And you've got this doom loop. So their reaction, again, it's a problem. Their reaction is to they won't cut anything. That's the problem. They won't cut any government expenditure, because we saw with the welfare reforms, Labour Party backbenchers won't let them, and they probably don't want to do that. So they just have to squeeze the tax base even further. Yeah. But don't fall off your chair. I actually support a rebasing of council tax because it's perfectly rational. Yeah. If you're in Doncaster, if you've got a terraced house in Doncaster, the amount you pay in council tax as a percentage of what the house is worth is much higher than if you've got a very nice house in Surrey. So actually, I would probably support a rebasing.
Well, they haven't changed the system since the 90s, have they? So
no.
Sort of, I mean, it does need to be recalibrated. I get that. But the trouble with recalibrating, and politicians use that word, but what they really mean is just put the prices up.
Yeah, just
put it up.
Yeah, so even in London South East, people are going to pay more.
But we're already paying more. It went up last year.
I get that. No, but if it was a foot race between. I mean, I think government expenditures should be cut in areas. They're still doing crazy DEI. They're still spending money, and they've lost the plot.
Well, look at HMRC this morning.
Yeah,
and what they're spending on
on anti-white DEI sessions. About
guilty for being British.
Yeah, it stinks, and we just don't have the money for this stuff, and they don't understand the urgency. But I'd far sooner they recalibrate council tax than put NI up or anything like that. This is a jobs tax that will wreck the economy. Yeah. So that's the risk. So yeah, we're in uncharted territory.
It's hard to know how much more they can wreck the economy, but every time I say that, they manage to come up with something else. Yeah. William Cleason, great to see you. Thank you very much, leader of the SDP. Just to give you a confirmation of the breaking news, a Kremlin have confirmed that Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin will meet in the coming days. Not quite sure where. And also, according to Keir Starmer in the Home Office, apparently we have detained the first illegal migrants under the government's New Deal before returning them to France. A little short on detail there. We'll try and get more for you. 0344 499 1000. Kevin in Gloucester says, he just put out Starmer's statement that he will stop at nothing to secure our borders. I thought he'd already done that. Stopped at nothing, that is. Yeah, very good. I see what you did there. This is Talk.
Marks and Sparks has apologised, but they haven't responded to any of the other things that have been coming up for absolutely years. For example, that they allow everybody to identify into whichever changing rooms they want. Women have been complaining about this directly. I have seen a letter that was written in 2017 about this, and the response was, we are inclusive, we are an inclusive retailer. I mean, this nonsense, we are excluding women who want to have a place to get changed in peace. So they've apologised on this, but they haven't actually answered questions about, do you have any male bra fitters who call themselves women?
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. It's 9:29. Goodness me, we only got half an hour to go. Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here soon. This alleged detaining of illegal migrants is a gimmick, says Dave in South Gloucester. It will not reduce actual numbers, just the count of how many arrive and actual numbers of migrants coming into the country. Smoke and mirrors, another attempt to fool the public. Well, yeah, it's a very vague press release. It's a very vague announcement with very few details, and you just wonder what the spin is all about. Let's get a voice note from Mark.
Yeah, good morning, Mike. It's Mark in Lancashire. My little question for you this morning is, how do you think slippery, snaky, slimy Starmer is going to try and worm his way out of this promise not to put taxes up for working people when they obviously have to? Now, we're starting this new narrative now about ordinary families and how interest rates have gone down and how they've fixed the foundations, and suddenly we're all feeling rich, apparently. We're all wealthy. He's done everything he needs to do. So is that going to be his narrative? Now we can put taxes up because things are a lot better and we've fixed everything for you so you're all loaded. Yeah. Like, is that going to be what they're going to say? Or are they going to come up with some totally different, slippery narrative altogether? I don't know. I dread to think, but whatever it is, it's just going to be totally ridiculous nonsense in it.
Yeah, I mean, the trouble is they've used this one before, haven't they? Because when they decided to do a reverse ferret and give the winter fuel allowance back to the pensioners, they said, and Rachel Reeves said it at the time, the reason they were doing that was not because it was a massive, massive error that had made them lose buckets of votes at the local elections. It was because they'd fixed the economy and now they could give the money back. It was a complete lie, absolute barefaced lie. Let's talk to Elliot Keck, though, head of campaigns at Taxpayers Alliance, because we're hearing now, Elliot, that the tax burden is going to get worse. It's going to get bigger. Council tax is going to go up. Income tax is probably going to be affected. VAT could possibly go up as well. But let's just remind ourselves of what Rachel Reeves said just a little while ago.
I'm really clear. I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes. And that is why, at this budget, we did wipe the slate clean.
What the budget in October did was draw a line under the economic and financial mismanagement of the Conservative government. I've now put our public finances in order, so never again will I have to do a budget like I did in October.
But our
public finances are now on a firm footing. We have now set the public spending envelope for this Parliament. We don't need to come back and ask for more. We've now set that. We're going to do a zero-based review to make sure we get value for money for every pound that taxpayers' money spent. In that budget, I've tried to fix the foundations and wipe the slate clean.
But it's so 1.3% year after next, for example. And that implies, doesn't it, that you're going to have to come back and ask for yet more tax rises?
Absolutely not. We have now set the envelope of spending for this Parliament and we're going to live within our means.
They've set the envelope for spending in this Parliament and then they've now set fire to it and chucked it in the bin. Elliot, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
So, I don't know whether this government have ever told the truth about anything, really. I'm trying to think back to something that they said they would do, which they then did and then didn't change. I can't think of anything.
Yeah, and that was quite extraordinary listening to that. She hasn't fixed the foundations. She's been treating the foundations like a tower of Jenga, and I'm afraid she's pulled one brick too many, and the whole thing is about to collapse. And essentially what we've seen over the last year, and I'm afraid under the previous government as well to some extent, is a continuing squeeze on the wealthiest in this country through things like VAT on private schools, council tax, second home premiums, a refusal to rule out the wealth tax, and as a result, many of them have left. We're losing more millionaires than any country in the world, and as a result, she's having to now shift the tax burden onto the rest of us. The top 1% used to pay 31% of income tax. They now only pay about 26.6% of income tax, and that means a lot more pressure on Middle England.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, in terms of the actual economy itself, you know, you can only squeeze so much out of it, can't you? And we're just listening to William Clouston there, the amount of money we're paying in interest every single minute of every day. I think there's, you know, millions of pounds an hour hour going out just to pay the interest in the monies we've borrowed, and they keep wanting to borrow yet more money. And every time they bring in some new tax regime, it never seems to raise as much as they thought it would.
Yeah, there's an old saying about tax that it's about plucking as many feathers from the goose with a minimum amount of squawking, and the squawking is now extremely loud. They're all having their own experiment to see just how much money they can squeeze out of the economy, and some of the taxes they've been raising actually aren't raising money. We've seen capital gains receipts go down since they raised that tax, and if they continue raising taxes in the upcoming budget, as it looks almost certain that they will, I'd imagine the revenues will be disappointing, because it will end up hitting growth, it will end up hitting employment levels, it will end up hitting inflation, and we'll be back in exactly the same position in a year's time.
Yeah, if not a worse position. I mean, are you one of those who worries about what happens over the course of the next 2 or 3 months in terms of just before the next budget, and you know, the international outlook and the gilts and all the rest of it, the instability of the markets? Because there's a lot of people in the city that are very jittery about all of it.
Yeah, I think we're very much close to a breaking point. As William Clouston said, that we are spending about £120 billion a year, and that's just on the interest. The debt is now something like £2.8 trillion. It's heading up to 100% of GDP, and the interest that we're paying on gilts is well above actually what it was during the mini budget under Liz Truss. So I do worry that we're at breaking point, and yet Rachel Reeves looks like she's only going to add more fuel to the fire this coming budget.
Yeah, absolutely right. And in terms of, you know, how far the kind of the council tax burden can get, you know, we've only just had a massive increase, particularly in London. A lot of other places around the country as well, you know, have gone up somewhere between 5 and 10%. You know, if they give permission for the councils to raise taxes, council taxes in particular, even more, you know, people are going to revolt on that, aren't they?
Yeah, I think they will. You know, the fundamental reality with councils is that we're paying more and we're actually getting less. They're introducing charges for services like gardening waste and various other charges. They're adding premiums onto people's second homes. So I think that would be a very risky manoeuvre. But Rachel Reeves is desperate to find money from somewhere. She's desperate to find money for local government. And, I am afraid that we are going to end up seeing some pretty crippling council tax rises over the next few years.
Yeah, it's going to be absolutely shocking. Elliot, thanks very much indeed. Elliot Keck, Head of Campaigns at Taxpayer Alliance, keeping us real with what is actually going on. It is incredible. You know, council tax having gone up for a lot of people as much as 10%, and now likely to go up another 10%. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. Great show as usual, said Ian in Cheshire. The migrants will probably be detained in a 4-star hotel, allowed to freshen up, be given a fresh set of clean clothes, top up their phones, fed and watered, and then sent back to France to start all over again. However, that could all change if you picked up a human rights lawyer's business card while booking the sauna at the hotel reception. What a load of old tosh. I mean, it does have that scent about it, doesn't it? Sort of scent of BS. That, you know, basically, since we've introduced this new system, we've detained some people in a hotel. Really? Okay. They're not allowed... Well, they are allowed out, but we know where they are. Okay, then. And have they got a lawyer? Well, they're in contact with lawyers, yeah. So when are you sending them back? Well, it's not very clear at the moment. And how are you sending them? How many of them are there? Well, we can't really say. You know, there's an awful lot of questions that are not being answered. Steve says this one. Can you explore the obvious issues that haven't been addressed with one in, one out? One, it's not really one in, one out. One more approved by France to come in will replace the one out. True. Number two, if the one out wins a legal battle, does the replacement for the one out get sent back, or do we now have one in, two in? Three, what does France do with the one out? Why can't they do whatever it is that they do with everyone in Calais now? And four, is the one out now banned from any chance of staying in the UK if they come back? They should not be counted as one out a second time. Will we know who they are, or will they avoid being the one out a second time? Such a stupid policy. Well, you've hit the nail on the head, Steve. None of it makes any sense. It's literally like the politics of the madhouse. You know, it's like they've gone and found some lunatic to come up with this ridiculous policy, which one, won't work, which two, will result in more people coming in than ever before, and three, will end up costing us even more money. Brilliant. Fantastic. It's 9:38.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 9:41. I'm Mike Graham, of course, here with you until 10. Julie Hartley-Brewer will be along then. Vicky and Paul says, so Starmer has, for example, detained 50 migrants today. How are they deciding which one of them is going back to France? Rock, paper, scissors? Yeah, you might well ask. At least he's calling them illegal migrants now, says Jenny. He'll have to rephrase this as it's against the left's ideology of irregular migrants. So do you remember, we've got that clip where he was talking to Donald Trump and he was so terrified of putting a foot wrong and getting it wrong that he sort of said the word irregular by mistake and then corrected it and was like, illegal migrants. You know, they say they've somehow detained some, but we don't know how many. We'll keep you abreast of that as we can. Right now, we're going to talk to Tamar Eshet, who is the cousin of Aviatar David, who is, of course, the Israeli hostage who's been held in the tunnels of Gaza since October the 7th, 2023. There's a picture of him there looking emaciated. This is the guy who we spoke about the other day, who Hamas had absolutely horrifically videoed digging literally his own grave and putting it out as propaganda because, in some people's eyes, they were empowered to do so by the likes of Keir Starmer, who came out a few days earlier and said that he wants to recognise Palestine as a state. I can only imagine, Tamar, how awful it must be for your family and how awful it must be for everybody in Israel just watching these kinds of horrific videos. Very good morning to you.
It's devastating, really.
Yeah.
You know, we've seen pictures like that 8 years ago. And I know for a fact that my family only exists because only one member of the family was in Israel and wasn't in the Holocaust, because the rest of the family was in Auschwitz and Dachau. And then 8 years after, in 2025, seeing this picture, it breaks my heart. It's devastating. It's horrible that anyone in this world has this cruelty, this hatred, this cynical set of mind to abuse someone and torture him only for their propaganda and risking their lives only for their video to show to the world and humiliating him, making him dig his own grave. I don't know how anyone could be so unhuman, really.
Yeah, I know. I think for anyone who is a normal individual, it's hard to imagine that anyone could ever behave that way towards somebody else.
Really, I think, as you said, that the world gave them power to do whatever they wanted. When we were in the peak of the negotiation, a lot of states started to have the irresponsible declarations of giving Gaza Palestinian states and making them withdraw from the negotiation and not accept the hostage deal, who was already on the table. And with these irresponsible declarations of so many Western countries in the world, they made the hostages stay there. Now Hamas won't take any deal because it feels like they have the power. And they keep on starving Aviatar, they keep on starving the hostages, and even their own people. You can see in the video that the hand that reaches to Aviatar, that giving him the can of beans, is a healthy hand, is a full hand, is a strong hand, while you see their campaigns of the starvation in Gaza. Well, someone's taking the food, someone's eating it, because you can see that the terrorists of Hamas are healthy and full.
Yeah, that's the trouble, isn't it? I mean, do you think that there's any way back to come to somehow a hope that you can get Aviatar back and the other hostages as well?
I think, of course, the countries in the negotiations, Israel and the US and Qatar has the biggest power, but I think the whole Western world, after seeing these photos, after understanding what Hamas is really doing, and it's not about the Palestinians, it's about their own power, and they don't see anyone as a human being. in order to get this power. The world has to stand united in a call to release the hostages, to first give them medicine, food, and then release them as soon as possible, and not give any tiny bit of power for Hamas until they do it without any other. I lost the word, but
yeah, distraction perhaps is the word. You know.
Yeah.
Would you have a message for Keir Starmer? He's one of the leaders, of course, who said that he's going to give Palestine an independent status at the United Nations in September. Would you have a message for him?
I think he has to be responsible with what he's saying and not just throw the declarations around like he has no power in his hands. And when he sees there's a negotiation and it was almost done in July until these declarations started to come out, and after seeing what the hostage deal really means and what Hamas is really doing, it's not about the Palestinians. Starving Aviatar and humiliating him and making him dig his own grave is not about the Palestinians, and it's about Hamas getting their own power. And he has to think if he prices terror, because that's what's happening right now. The world is giving prices for terrorists.
Yeah, it really isn't good. Tamar, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. We hope you have something good to see at some point soon. Tamar Rachet, the cousin of Aviatar David, the man who you saw in that horrible video digging his own grave, emaciated, obviously starving, being kept under the ground of the Gaza Strip since October the 7th, 2023. You can't imagine what that must be like. Absolutely terrible. We've got much more to do, of course, between now and 10 o'clock. Only 10 minutes to do it in. Let's get a voice note from Darren.
Morning, Mike. Darren from Suffolk. Great show as ever. I'm imagining the scene. Dave, it's the prison governor here at Brixton. Have you gone home with the keys? Can you just check your belt, see if you've got this big bunch of keys hanging from your belt? Can you pop them back, mate, so we don't have to change all 400 cells and cost us millions of quid? Cheers, mate. Oh, by the way, Mike, on the terms of songs, when Keir Starmer goes abroad, who are you? Ooh, 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 ooh.
I really want to know. This from John in Bexley Heath. Mike, did you pick up on the tune that was being played to Keith? Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. A joke or a request? Anyway, my song for Starmer, how about Taxman by the Beatles? Because we all know it's coming. And Jilly from Cheshire says, how about I Don't Like Mondays or any blinking day of the week with this government? That's very good. The Boomtown Rats. Absolutely. Boomtown, if only. It's 9:48.
realistic do you think a ceasefire is this week?
There's a very good chance that we'll have a settlement, an agreement of some kind.
We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.
What are you looking for here?
An end. A real end. Well, all of a sudden he's a big shot because he has the U.S. on his side. I am very disappointed with President Putin. He'll talk so beautifully and then he'll bomb people at night.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. It's 9:51. Julie Hartley-Brewer coming in very shortly. The migrant deal is a gimmick, says Peter. All of them are detained on arrival as normal and put into processing in hotels awaiting due process. No different. Send them all back to France and tell the French to sod off. Says Pete in Lincolnshire. And Andy from Mansfield, if Starmer's going to build on what they did in the first year, we're all well and truly stuffed, because in the first year I have a less disposable income from my pension. I'm worried about the forthcoming winter, even with the fuel allowance, and I don't feel it's safe to leave at my home after dark. Well, that's not very good. Let's have a listen to what Starmer said yesterday about fixing the foundations and making it all focused.
The focus will be living standards, and we will build on what we've done in the first year of this government, but the focus will very much be on living standards and making sure people feel better off. What's really important is that I'm very clear about our focus, which will be on living standards and making sure that people feel better off, partly because more money is coming into their pocket in the first place through better wages, and partly because we're bearing down on costs like mortgages and other costs to everyday families.
Yes, focus is the most important thing. Focus, absolutely. Ryan Parry's here, senior reporter at The Sun. He's got a great story in the paper today. Off the front and on page 9, thousands of bingo players are fuming after thinking they won big in a £1.6 million prize pot. It turned out it was a glitch and it was voided, so they never won anything. Ryan, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good to see you, man. It's a long time. Long time. I know you can tell people how long we've known each other. How did this happen then? Because a lot of people thought they'd won 9 or 10 grand for a 1 pence ticket, which is nice little turnaround. But then it all got taken off them again.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary story, Mike. So essentially, you know, it's a normal night for Gala Bingo players. They signed into a game called Summer Nights Bingo, and normally the stake is you know it's pennies. You buy bingo cards for 1 pence a pop. And you can buy multiple cards, and the cash pot is normally £150. But according to Gala Bingo, because of a technical glitch on Monday night for around 2 hours, the cash pot ballooned to £1.6 million.
Right.
So all of a sudden, these players who were normally winning fivers, tenors, were suddenly seeing thousands of pounds in their bank account. I spoke to one lady who had £10,000 in her bingo account. She was obviously thrilled, desperately tried to transfer that money into her own account. Right. She was told by Gala Bingo, by the chat host, that it was all genuine, it's all fine. But of course, the next morning there was no money in her account, and she received an email from Gala saying, you know, we do apologise, but you won't be receiving your money.
I mean, that's terrible, isn't it? Because there's nothing worse than I mean, happily they couldn't get at the money, I suppose. But imagine if somebody had spent the money or gone, oh, I'll go and buy myself something nice because I've got 10 grand coming to me. Did you find anybody had done that?
Yeah, I mean, lots of people had started to make plans, obviously. I spoke to one lady who said her dog has poor eyesight and she'd desperately wanted to pay for a £500 operation to have the the operation so the dog could see. And there was another woman who had planned a holiday, and her daughter was going to pay a car loan off. So you have people who obviously don't have very much, and for a split second they thought they'd hit it big and their life was going to change, and suddenly now they feel very deflated.
That's awful. Somebody asked me this morning, do you think they might sue? But I suppose they haven't really got any rights, because presumably the small print says that there might be these things that can go wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Gala Bingo have been very clear to say that it's in the terms and conditions that if the money is received when there's been an error, when there's been a glitch, then under the terms and conditions, we have a right to get that money back, basically.
Yeah. That's a shame, isn't it? So, and have they said how they think it happened?
No, not at all. No, they're just literally referring to it as a technical glitch.
Right. That seems to be the great excuse now. There was a technical glitch that caused British airspace to be closed down last week. Technical glitch caused Heathrow Airport to be shut down because nobody could get through the tunnel. Technical glitch that stopped Marks and Spencer's from being able to process any payments. This now seems to be the new go-to, sickie.
Yeah, and it's an easy excuse, there's no recourse here. At the end of the day, they made a massive mistake. From an optics point of view, this is it's terrible for Gala Bingo, because people can't trust the platform now. You pay your money, and it tells you you've won thousands of pounds, and then they turn around and say, sorry, you're not having it. There's going to be a huge trust issue going forward.
You would think so, yeah. Well, a great story anyway, Ryan. Thanks very much for talking to us about it. Ryan Parry, senior reporter there at The Sun. Big bingo balls up is what the headline says. And nobody's getting any money, I'm afraid. They played the bingo and it didn't work out for them. Starmer's favourite song, how about Down, Down, Deeper and Down by the Status Quo, says Terry. Yeah, thank you very much indeed. Money for Nothing, that's another one. Martin from Suffolk. Julie Hartley-Brewer is here. Very good morning to you.
Very good morning.
Starmer apparently loves music, he said.
Yeah.
I mean, really, does he?
Football, and he's just a man of the people, because he is the son of a toolmaker.
He is indeed.
It's just, I just don't think any of this stuff just makes you sort of think you warm to him at all. You still don't want to sit next to him on a long train journey, do you?
Not even a short one. I wouldn't want to go from here to Canary Wharf with him. That'd be bad enough. Anyway, you've got a big show coming up.
We've got a big show, yeah. We've got a porn actress coming on, Bonnie Blue, and it's not Shemana, of course, pretending they've never heard of. The amount of hate, the amount of anger online about this, wow, people off the scale on this. I think it's really weird. If you talked about homelessness, but you never spoke to someone who was homeless, or you talked about grooming gangs, someone who'd been a victim of that sort of thing. Now, see, I'm a middle-aged woman. I'm going to be the Mary Whitehouse in this scenario. I want to find out why Bonnie Blue, that's not her real name, her real name's Tia Billinger, but actually why she and so many young women think that it's completely normal to sell their bodies, and that sex work is just a kind of work. I don't think it is.
And the justification for a lot of it is, making a lot of money.
A lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, what are you willing to do? And the idea, will anyone be willing to do it? And if you don't want to do it, you're just jealous of her. And that's the issue. And I think it'll be an interesting conversation. If people don't want to listen, they can choose not to listen. But I think it's a bit rich for people to think that I'm going to suddenly change my interviewing because I've got a porn actress in the studio.
No,
but there we are.
But there we are. Well, it's the first time for everything, I suppose.
Well, exactly.
And who knows? But listen, there's so much going on as well. We've got
Trump.